Antina, you're up first this morning.
But I believe you're still muted.
I clicked on mute. Oh, there we go. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
It says fundraising. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, someone keep track if there's questions for me, because in watching both screens, I might miss something.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Aislinn, did you want to say anything general for the group stuff before we get started? I'll take that as a no. Okay. So the first topic this morning is basically fundraising, and basically what is it? What can we do? What can we not do? And how do I record it? Because while all fundraising, all donations are basically money from fundraising, not all donations are fundraising in the eye of the IRS. It's kind of a weird thing on how they view things, because basically it's are we keeping within our means of what the IRS stated goals are? And fundraising for technically is just any income raised from non-medieval activities. Basically anything that is not a site fee or any fees that we're being paid to do, even demos. Demos are not considered fundraising if you're being paid for a demo. And the IRS doesn't care how that income is raised, just that it is, as long as it's not by events or demos. These include things like auctions, car washes, t-shirt sales, book sales, bake sales, rest stop, coffee stops. This, however, does not include raffles. We, as the SCA, cannot do any gambling at all. And it's basically if you, and I'm just going to get that out there, if you are paying to play, there is a prize that you're paying to play for, and this include raffles or anything like that. And if there's a chance that you could win, that is considered gambling. And just, we can't do it. Now, I know people have said yes, but we've done them in the past, and you typically, when you look at when people were doing them, it was probably some private person running it for the SCA. So there's two kinds of fundraising as far as the SCA is concerned. There's internal, and those are fundraising activities that actually happen at events where the main audience is basically us. That's if you haven't looked at the report, and some of you haven't yet because you're brand new, on your income statement, there is internal fundraising. So if your main audience is basically, even if you're doing t-shirt sales outside of an event, who are you marketing those t-shirts to? It's usually the participants of the SCA and members. The next one is basically external, and that's basically the audience is the outside world. That would be things like, doing a car wash in garb, which, some people thought it was fun. I've seen it done. Doing any kind of bake sale where you're set up at a fun run or a parade or anything like that. Coffee stand sales. There was a group, and I don't remember what, I think it was Fire Mountain Keep, got at the rest stop, they sold coffee and pastries, and that was considered external fundraising. It was pretty good gig for them. They made some pretty good money at that. It's really difficult to get those, but that would be an example of external fundraising. So fundraisers can be held by basically SEA groups, any of the officers, event staff, guilds or orders that are considered official. Now, these funds have to be held by a warranted officer of the group. And remember, only members can handle SCA funds. That's incredibly important. Private fundraisers are held by individuals. These funds are held by
adult members.
Well, yes, this is true. Yes, adult members. Private fundraisers are held by individuals, and that's where you may have seen a raffle, but it was being funded by someone totally. All we're doing is giving them space, and it's not sponsored by the SCA. It may have a medieval theme to it, but it will never be sponsored by the SCA. And that is really super important, because if the powers that be ever got wind that we were doing something as far as gambling goes, we could be in a lot of trouble, because there are some rules about how much you can make, but they don't look at just your group. They look at it as a whole for the entire state. So that's why, we just can't do it. Remember that you have to be okay with the person who wants to raise funds for you. And you need to be able to put the SCA in a positive light. In other words, no beefcake auctions. That does not necessarily put, somebody, the SCA, in a positive light. It could be construed so many different ways. And if you're not okay with this person who wants to raise funds for you, you don't have to do it. And you should make sure you're in contact with your financial committee about it. If you feel at all uncomfortable, you need to make somebody know. Make your financial committee know that you're not comfortable with this person. It's the same thing with like gate heads. As an exchequer, you have the right to say no to whoever is your gate head. So the other thing to think about, private fundraisers are not recorded as fundraising income, but as donations, because they're not being run by the SCA. Does that make sense to everybody? And if you have any questions about where to put something, make sure you reach out to us and let us know. Okay. General guidelines. Make sure that any activities, again, put the SCA in a positive way. If you as Exchequer are not in charge of the fundraiser, make sure whoever is handling it is in good standing. But remember, if you are in charge as the Exchequer, it was your idea, too deep on cash, make sure that you are totally transparent, 100%. You have, all the recordings, everything, if this is something that you are doing. It's a good idea not to, but you can. And remember, you have to be comfortable with the person that they are a member. Number 3, make sure that the reason why you're doing this fundraiser is really super clear to everybody. One, if it's for a specific reason, say you're going to do a pavilion and you say, we are raising money for a pavilion, well, you better spend that money on a pavilion. And always have a clause at that point that once you've paid money for this thing, whatever it is you're doing, that whatever's left over can be put into either, in the case of like a pavilion or raising for a trailer, a repairs and maintenance fund or general operating expenses. As you will hear later, it's really super important to make sure that if you are raising money for a thing, it becomes restricted funds at that point, and you'll get the more definition about that later. You always have to have an out with restricted funds. So fundraising for other 501c3s, you can raise money. And a good example of that is the peer auction. It was the Knights auction that is held at 12th night. However, the SCA on these, the money doesn't come to the SCA. It is a pass-through. It goes directly, the winners write their checks directly to the nonprofit, or they donate through their website. The whole point of this is any of those monies cannot go into SCA, or they shouldn't go into SCA funds. That's just, or in SCA bank accounts. It's just much simpler if you don't. The headache of keeping track of all of that is not worth it. So sometimes groups want to raise money for disaster relief funds. We've seen that, especially the last couple of years. Glen Aubin is a good example when they had the hurricane hit, or they want to do it for trusts or families of deceased members. Unfortunately, unless they're an official 501c3, you can't raise money for them. They usually don't have a federal ID number. And if you have a group that you want to give money to, and they are an actual 501c3, you can check with the IRS, do your due diligence, look them up. Ask the group for a W-9. If they are at all a business and a legitimate business, they will know what that form is, because basically it's giving you the federal ID number, and you will have to have that for your year-end reporting. As Aislinn can attest to, the SCA is, and the auditors are very much looking at who we give money to and who we get money from. Okay, so raising funds for disaster relief, not the Red Cross. If members want to pass the hat or do a private fundraiser, they can, but don't put them in the SCA fund account. You can also do non-cash donations, and these are known as in-kind donations. These include anything given to you that just isn't cash. Good examples are Toys for Tots and food banks. You also can't spend monies on any of the in-kind donations unless it's for an actual 501c3. In other words, you can't go out and buy food and give it to a member or give it to a food bank that isn't actually a 501c3. Now you can collect in-kind donations of actually getting, come to an event, bring your canned food, you'll get $5 off your site fee, or something along those lines. You can do that and then take the food to the food bank, but you're not supposed to be spending money on anything that is not for a legitimate 501c3. You can also ask for in-kind donations from like merchants. When you get things, that's what, when you have a merchant donating something to an auction that's going to benefit the SCA, that is considered an in-kind donations. You don't ever actually put that on your report. It never actually makes it. But you still have to track it, because you need, and that's just, in the event bookkeeping, you have to be able to know about it in the event bookkeeping. And remember, if anybody wants to give you an in-kind donation, you don't have to accept it. Things like, oh, I have this trailer, I want to get rid of it. How about you guys take it? You don't have to say yes, because maybe the group doesn't want to put up with storing it, put up with the maintenance. They don't have anything to put in it. You don't have to accept it. I'm sure that others can tell you stories of stuff. So mantras to live by when fundraising, the law of unintended consequences. How will my branch look? And when you sit down and say, yes, we want to do some fundraising, think about it from all sides. How is this going to look to the outside? Protect your branch, protect your people, protect the SCA. Communicate, 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 do it clearly, have a realistic view about how fundraisers are viewed. Something to think about, if you ever decide that you want to do like a t-shirt fundraiser, take the orders of the take the orders first. I think Wastekeep did that, didn't you? You took the orders first and then sold them, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Take orders first. Don't print up a whole bunch of t-shirts and then have to carry them as inventory. And because they'll be on there for years, because you'll never sell that last one and you have to track that last one. Take the orders first and then hand them out when they come in. Only give money out by check if you're paying, if you have a pass through where you've collected money and or did a fundraiser and you decide to write a check, or you just want to write a check to some 501c3. I know some groups actually do send money to, like, I'm blanking on the breast cancer, Jake Coleman. I've seen those. They do it for Red Cross, all that stuff. Make sure that you're doing it by check. Never, ever, ever give out cash. And only after you have full approval of your financial committee. That's because you're answerable and so are they to the money. And the last one is always never lose your sense of humor, for very long anyway. Any questions? I know it went pretty fast. There's not a lot. Any questions?
I think
Nope.
I've made this mistake. So there's a different area on the report for fundraising versus donations.
Yes. So fundraising, if you put out fundraising, if you're actually doing a fundraising thing, this is not when you put money, this is not Bubba, when you put out the donation jar.
Okay.
The donation jar. That is not fundraising. That's just donations.
Okay, I'll have to look at that this year. There is a question. There has been some interest in our branch to have some sort of automated donation system. People don't want to remember to write checks or get cash every month. Are there any tools that the SCA will let us use for that? The answer is yes. Actually, you can work with the Kingdom PayPal deputy to set up a donation button on the PayPal information. We have a form for that. The one thing you have to remember is PayPal fees will be taken out, but it gives the person the option to also cover those PayPal fees when they make that donation.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Turkle, you're up.
Yeah, but I'm not going to need an hour.
Oh, well.
So what I have, how is it listed? Common issues, end of the report, end of the year report, etc.
General report tracking, using the general report and transferring to the new report, and end of year mistakes.
Okay. Let me share my screen.
So I think you can cover that in an hour.
I think I can cover that in like 20 minutes, honestly.
Hopefully there'll be lots of questions.
Please don't. Please take your time.
So okay, I'm gonna joke, and everyone, this is the complicated part, and the only reason it's complicated is the Excel sheet looks daunting. It's not. It's really, really not. So if you don't have the current form on the SCA page I'm showing here, sca.org/resources/document-library, is a collection of financial reports. Now, these are US non-subsidiary reports, which is the majority of Ontier. I believe the Canadian branches are using the subsidiaries branch one. I'm not 100% positive on that one. Can someone correct me on that one if I need to? Okay, moving on. Don't worry about the PDF option. It's kind of a stupid way of doing it. You want the spreadsheet, you want Excel. Whether you're a small branch, medium branch, or large branch depends a lot on how much you have coming in, donations, regalia, things like that. Most branches will use the medium one. I think the difference right now between the small and the medium is like regalia, which we're not tracking anymore, and the medium one has more pages for more things if you have more items. So you might be able to get away with a small branch one. You probably will work on the medium branch one. So I'm gonna go ahead and download that, and then I will open it.
I'm going to say, and hopefully your predecessor is passing that on to you.
You should pass it on. Every once in a while, I find it's good to grab it again and make sure, because they will, the SCA corporate in its infinite wisdom will change the change the Excel file or update it and not always share that they're doing that. So I'm going to stop sharing there, and then I'm going to share the brand new financial report medium. Now, the form in question, everyone who is an Exchequer has access to the office. Hey, don't do that. That's what I get for clicking the OK button. Sheesh. No, I don't want to learn more. Go away. Every Exchequer, every Ontier account has access to the web version of Excel through their Office 365. The forms will work on that. I've been running that for the Exchequer for the canton for probably about 4 years now, and it does work. There's a couple of oddities when you switch between the downloaded version of Excel versus the web version of Excel, but I will make this point very, very clear. Don't use OpenOffice, Cordis, Google Docs. Don't use anything but Excel. It will cause you more heartache than it's worth, especially considering you have access to a copy of Excel. So this is the report when you get it at blank. You will notice that there's tabs across the bottom here. And so I'll show you this one, and then I'll show you the one that I actually use for day-to-day. But this one does not have anything for a bank register. For whatever reason, society decided to take that out of this form a couple years back. I think it was because Alonda was the only one who knew how to really do it, and she kind of stopped doing that for a while. But if you don't have, if you don't have a lot of activity, some of the smaller branches out here in the hinterlands use this all the way at the end, this free form, which is basically just an open Excel sheet, and they will use that as their register. You know, they'll put the date, they'll put the check number, they'll put what it was, and maybe what subcategory it's supposed to go to. Now, when you turn your form in at the end of the year, this is the form that you're supposed to turn in. So we'll come back to that on switching between the form that you want to use and this form that you are supposed to use. But it is, I'm going to scroll way back all the way down the bottom. So from the beginning, table of contents. This gives you everything you're going to need to start with. You need to put your branch in. Anything in the blue form fields are fields that you can change. Anything that isn't blue is something you can't change. So I can't change this, that it's a cumulative versus a quarterly versus a what was the other way we were doing it for a while there? Sequential. I can't change that anymore because we're not supposed to do anything but cumulative reports. But I can change the name of the branch, the Seneschal's name, the Exchequer's name, the year, and the quarter. So that's going to come in when you're doing reports, because if you don't have it in the right quarter, it's not going to grab the details from the current quarter. So if you're doing the report now, you're in Q4, but if your form still says Q3, anything you do for this quarter isn't going to register because it's not this quarter yet on the form. This is going to fill in other places. So if you put things in here, awesome, Seneschal, even better, Exchequer. All right, 2022 quarter. It's a drop down. 4. The currency type, it's going to be US dollars for most of you. Some of you guys are going to be Canadians. These are all of the currency types, if you want to really look, where SCA has branches. So you can, it's interesting. It's not really important for anything other than what you're doing next. Now you'll notice that, so I've got Canton, Awesome Seneschal, Even Better Exchequer, 2022 and 4. Once I go to contact info, this is going to want my information, any of my deputies' information, anyone who has access to real property or cash needs to be a warranted deputy. So that's your Chamberlain, that's, I don't know, your PayPal deputy if you have one. I mean, gate leads are a temporary thing, so they need to be there, but anyone who has an ongoing, reoccurring thing, your deputy should be on here. And if you need more information here, talk to Aislinn. I don't know if we can put them somewhere else, but basically this just goes to the form when they do the warranting at 12th night and July coronation. So you'll notice I had Q4, so it filled in the branch and the dates. This is all your bank information. A lot of this will change over the course of your time as Exchequer, like especially your name of contact. Like I know that we've had our banker change 3 times since I took over again for the canton in 2019. So it's not necessarily super important to confirm that you've got the information, but that's going to be nice for somebody else if they need to get a hold of the branch. And Siobhan just had a message about Canadian branches are using the subsidiary reports. Okay, cool, thank you. This is not your register. This should be the snapshot at the end of the month. So you're going to put in, you have all this information. I'm not going to fill it in because it's kind of silly for it is, but as of the end of 2022, we had $2,000 in the bank balance, and our register had $1,900. Well, we're $100 off because you can see right here we're $100 off because we have a check number, or check that was written on October, let's go 5th, for $100. So now we're good because the bank says we have $100 or we have $2,000. We wrote a check for $1,000 and we show that we have 1,900. 1,900 plus 100, 2,000, we're good. But so it's important to keep track of, things that you have written. It's important to remember that your bank register is the truth, and what you get from the statement from the bank is not necessarily, because you can have outstanding checks that haven't cleared yet. You can have deposits that haven't cleared yet. If you have a large deposit, they might not give you all of it access at once. So just keep that in mind. I know a lot of people at the beginning, they're like, well, the bank says we have this much in it. Well, that's great. What, you know, you got checks that are written that don't match up to that. Down here is all of the signers on the checking account. Now this is your, this is your primary account. So if you have a checking account, this would be, well, you have a checking account. This would be where everyone needs to be on, and you probably should, A, when you take over, B, when you change, when anyone else changes jobs, so the seneschal changes, or your deputies change, or if you have people who are signers, if they come and go, make sure to keep this updated when their membership changes. So when you get renewal, they're going to renew their membership. They need to send you a copy of their blue card, because they are then responsible and need to prove that they are members, and you need to be able to verify that your people who are your signers are still members. But you'll notice that the Exchequer filled in from the information from the contents page because it's easier that way. And this stuff will fill in from the contact info for you. It won't fill in for anyone else. If you have multiple accounts, so if you have a second savings account, or a savings account, a second savings account, any sort of investments, which gets a little funky, so don't do that without approval. This is where you're going to put the information here. Oh, one thing I forgot to put. Does this account earn interest? Yes or no? It's a drop-down choice. Some checking accounts earn interest, some don't. And the difference is going to be where it puts the money on this form, whether you have non-interest bearing cash or interest bearing cash. A lot of this form will be filled out from the other bits of information, but you can tell right here that we're off because we don't have proof of that money and we don't have the long-standing running. When this is even, when this is equal, and then you will be balanced. Income. This is how you get in the money in. There's the interest earned. And so since this form doesn't have the other stuff, you're just going to type that in. Any of the outgoing checks are going to be here in the expenses. And again, the blue is the things you can change. The white is the things you can't change because they come from other parts of the form. In the form with the register, which I will show you here in a minute, most of those pull from that register as long as you choose the correct category. You'll notice these categories here, 12, 13, 14 down here, and then office admin. That will make sense when you look at the categories because it will be like 19.2. Well, that's expense 19, general supplies, activity related, 2. So 1, 2, 3 on those choices. Assets, things that are undeposited, things that are weird. Most of the time, the only thing you're going to have in here is in the prepaid expenses, and that's when you write a check for like a down payment or a deposit to hold. And until you use it, it sits in here because you've written the check, it just hasn't been done anything with it. You haven't actually used it yet. Liability, again, you're going to have things here as you need them. It will make sense when you get to use them, and you should probably see them on the forms that you have access to already. Inventory. This is, you know how Etienne said, don't buy a whole bunch of t-shirts to sell, because you have to keep track of it here. So pretty much don't do that. It makes things much easier if you don't do that, because then you don't have to keep track of it here, because that gets really, really ugly. Regalia. This is going away as of 2021. We're no longer tracking regalia at the corporate level. So this is a little bit odd of how they're doing it to get rid of it. So they've changed this to say basically don't do this anymore. We used to keep track of anything over $1,500 or $500. But since it doesn't increase in value and it doesn't depreciate, it just kind of is what it is. The IRS has decided that that's not the best option for us. So pretty much this should be empty, and I'm gonna guess that in the form in the next year or two, it will go away completely. Depreciation, this only comes into account in the fourth quarter of the year, and anything that is on your form, it's okay, Duncan. Oh, okay. Etienne, there's a question for you in the chat from Duncan about fundraising, which we can do here in a minute. Depreciation is done at the end of the year, and once it goes onto this form, until you have sold it, it has completely been used up and destroyed and retired, or it gets stolen, it stays on this form. So there, you could have a trailer that you still use that's 25 years old, which should still be on this form. The limit is $2,000, and that's after taxes for those of you who have to deal with sales tax. So depending on how much you got it for, you're going to put in what it is, when it is, and when it was purchased, and then it's going to do the math on the current value. Most year-end reports, when I was the reporting deputy, this would not go correctly. Something would be messed up in the form or the calculation, or someone would try to override thinking they could change the formula or change the value at the time. And I spent a lot of time in January trying to fix people's forms for this tab. So be careful with it. Transfers in is where money comes to you from another SCA account within Kingdom or outside Kingdom. So if your branch is being sent money from another branch within the Kingdom, it goes here. If you're getting money from like the West Kingdom for Ontario West War, Orontius would put it here in the outside Kingdom. This, I'm guessing this doesn't happen for a lot of people, this chunk of the form right here. Majority of the people are going to be dealing with this in Kingdom, and that's really only when you're transferring money between branches, because it's all the SCA's money. It's all corporate money. Corporate, Kingdom, Baron Eel, Cantons, Shires, it all belongs to the SCA based on the tax ID. So moving money between is just rearranging teacups. Transferred out. So this is when you're going to send money to somebody. So if Lothanor sends Wastekeep a check for some reason, then it's going to be out on Lothanor's, in on Wastekeep's, and they should match. The check number will need to match. The date needs to roughly match. You should use the date of the check, not the date you got it, and the amount should match. When you send money to Kingdom, when you send money to corporate for insurance, or I can't think of any other reason you'd send money to corporate, it goes here at the corporate office reason. Now, if you have to buy insurance and one of your populace uses a credit card to buy the insurance and then you write a check to reimburse them, you still put it here because it's a pass-through. So you put, equestrian insurance via credit card, Bob Smith, because then corporate is going to track that the money came out of your account through Bob Smith into their account. When you send money to the heralds for branch related items, those are within Kingdoms. It is the on-tier College of Heralds. No one should be sending money to the College of Arms except branches, but that's something else entirely. If you send money to a different kingdom, so like what I was talking earlier with Orontius and Ontario West War, So the West Kingdom would put it in this form that they were sending it to Ontario. And again, everything's got to match at the corporate level because all of your reports go up to Kingdom, get massaged a little bit. All the Kingdom reports go up to corporate and get massaged a little bit because it's all one big company for the IRS. Income detail. This is the fundraising that Etienne was talking about, internal versus external. And this is new. This direct contributions, they've added the 11C tab as of 2021 because they want to know where money is coming that is direct because IRS is worried that we're doing money laundering, I'm guessing. Income from demo and activities. So there's that difference that Etienne was talking about. Fundraising, internal, external, direct contributions, and demos. That's all on this page here, except the direct contributions, I'll do that now, is here because they want to make sure that it's not laundering drug money. I'm not sure. When we do donation type thing, like the Canton did a garage sale basically where everyone donated stuff to be sold, and then it went in a kitty jar. So name of organization was various members of the populace, reason, garb sale, date received was the date and the amount. So you can get a little bit generic, but if someone gives you a couple $100 or something like that directly, you should put their name down there. Okay, back to income detail. Income detail for, this is the this is the event income. So adjusted gross income is everything you're getting minus the gate from an event. So your NMR is going to go in there, and your gate and your feast and anything there. And there is a split between cash and check, which is this 3 up here, and then what you get from PayPal. We'll come back to PayPal later in the day, but realize that what you get from PayPal is not what you think you should get from PayPal because PayPal has fees. Net advertising income, I don't think I've ever seen that used. So, and then other stuff. And if you think you need to be in here, Aislinn should be talking to you before you get to that point. Expense detail, advertising. So if you buy an ad in the newspaper, that would go here, non-SCA. Bad debts would be like things, someone wrote a check that bounced and you can't get a hold of them to reconcile that issue. Now remember, if someone writes you a check and they bounce, when they redo that check, they need to cover the bounce fees. That is not your guys' coverage, that's their coverages. Fees and honoraria are honoraria, there we go. That is going to be things, there are people who put like a Biffy fee in there versus event thing. There's a question about that one. Usually I use it like when we started doing Collegium and we would have a guest speaker at the beginning and we paid them, $200 to come out and be a guest speaker. That's where we would put that in there. Whether you put fees that are charged to you in there is a little bit questionable. And I think as long as you're consistent, I don't know, what do you guys think, Aislinn and Etienne, about like PO boxes and dumping fees and things like that?
Basically what, at least, I don't know if Aislinn might be able to tell us more, but mostly it was, don't split the Biffy thing out. I mean, if you really want to, go ahead. But it's more headache than it's worth. Just put web fees if you have a web minister, post office boxes, basically that goes
Zoom
under
fees.
postage. Zoom fees would go there, but post office boxes wouldn't, because that goes under postage. That goes in, let's see, what else?
What about trailer registration?
Trailer
tabs?
tabs, right.
banquet fees, if you're having a event that requires a banquet fee. In Pierce
The-
County,
the
we have
banquet
that
permit.
problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a catch-all, but kind of like.
Wouldn't that be event related though? I mean, we've always taught that the post office goes under event related.
I put it in the event thing when we have to charge it, but I mean, like, I'm more consistent. I tend to be consistently trying to put things in events and things where I can versus using these other tabs. But I'm lazy, so there is something to be said about keeping it simple.
Not lazy.
Well, and I always looked at it as everything we do is event related. I mean, even the storage fees, if you've got stuff, you know, if you're retaining baronial stuff in storage, that's all event related. So
you use the stuff you're storing for events. So
yeah,
It is, but that's occupancy. Fees are basically just, yes, while they might be event related, that's where the OA, A, and FR come into right. It's just where you put them. So that's why, you know, post office boxes, it's still events, it's still postage and post office box.
Yeah,
that's what goes.
Yeah,
there.
that reminds me. Thank you. The OA, AR, and FR, office administration, the .1. Activity related, the .2, and was it fundraiser, the .3. So you can keep track of, you know, this is 17-1 or .1, .2, .3. That's where that comes in, and that you'll notice is on all of these higher number, you know, income details, expenses all have one of these OA, AR, FR. Because we are a 501c3, the majority of there's a certain percentage that has to go to the base ideal of the SCA, and some of it can go to the office and fundraising, but the majority of it needs to go to the events. Now, that being said, there are times when, like, legitimately something is for office and admin. We're talking about like the post office box. If you're only getting banking bills, then yeah, that's probably office. I can try and see it here.
You need to then divide up the post office between events and office. Wouldn't you just leave it all as office?
No, it's not worth the trouble.
Yeah.
If you get more pre-reg checks in your post office box, then you do your bank statements. You know, you get one bank statement a month in the post office box, but you pre-reg for at least 2 events a year. You're probably getting more pre-reg checks than you are your bank statements. Then you do it as event.
Yeah. What if you pay for a whole year for your post office box and then you only record it once?
Exactly. Yeah,
well,
you only record
exactly.
it once.
But it's a matter of what you think you should be doing.
Yeah,
that's a bad way of putting it. I would say, you know, it's a matter of where you think you should be doing it, and, you know, you'll get corrected if it's completely wrong. But, you know, when Wastekeep had, I used to be the Exchequer of Wastekeep. So when Wastekeep had the PO box, we never got pre-reg checks because we didn't do it that way. We only ever got bank statements and junk mail. So A, we decided it wasn't worth keeping it because we weren't doing anything with it. And B, when we still had it, it was all office because it was just bank statements.
Right.
So, you know, if you can talk yourself, no, that's going to sound bad, but if you can talk yourself into using it for events, use it for events, you know.
Okay.
Do you guys want to know the difference as to why you put most things in event and why you would not, why you want most things into events? Do you want to know the why?
Go for it.
Aislinn can probably speak to this better than I can. I don't know if things have changed some, but basically, I'm sure most of you have heard when you're going to give money to a nonprofit, when you should always do your research and see where they're spending their money. If more than 90% or more than 10% is going into the actual running of the business of the nonprofit, you're probably better giving your money someplace else. Because what's happening is most of the money that they're supposed to be raising is supposed to be going to their stated goal that's with the IRS. So if you can put most things into events, that's great. That's where it should be. Because we don't want, if someone wants to donate to the SCA and just give money, just to be giving money, we don't want our administrative costs to be more than 10% of our income and expenses. Kind of confusing, but that's why.
And that's why I say if you can justify it yourself. So if I can say, no, the majority of the use of this mailbox is for event related because we get 12 statements a year, but we get 200 pre-reg checks for this events that we do. Okay, that makes sense. But if it's like, well, we get like 3 checks for events and 12 statements, well, really it's more office admin. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, so insurance. So the next tab over is expense detail 12B. Insurance non-SCA. I don't think I've ever seen this being used in the last 8 years I've been an Exchequer.
I use it.
For what?
We pay $500 a year for insurance on our storage unit and our trailer.
Oh, well, there you go.
Kingdom
would,
uses
wouldn't you?
it, so does Aquaterra.
Okay, well, there you go. So if you're using things for insurance specifically, how do you guys do? No, I don't want to know. That's a separate conversation. That's going to lead a whole bunch of other questions. Other expenses. See this bright and yellow? Contact your Kingdom Exchequer before using this section, because there's going to be something weird, and they're going to need to know what you are doing and why. Now, when you do a donation to another 501c3, expense, or the important part being another 501c3, it's going to go here. Donations to SCA Inc. subsidiaries and other 501c3 nonprofits. Now, the Canadian branches that are sending money to US branches, it's a donation. The barony gave money to the 501c3 that runs the historic town hall in Waitsburg because we use it a lot and they were using it to remodel. So we donated money. They're a 501c3. We had their W-9. We had proof of a 501c3. We put it in here when we did that. But you need to get that federal ID number. You need to know why. You need to fill this out completely. If you don't, you're going to get probably a phone call at this point from Aislinn going, excuse me, we need some details here. Because that's going to be one of those things that is going to trigger questions further up the line. Financial committee, it pre-fills Seneschal and Exchequer because Seneschal and Exchequer will be on your financial committee, but you get to choose between how you have your financial committee set up. So your choices are everyone in the branch, and that's that's members, everyone at the meeting, or certain people. How you have your financial policy, your financial committee set up will depend on your branch's rule set. You can change those, you can do those. Remember that the financial committee meetings are your meetings. They're not the Seneschal's meetings. They're not a random members of the populace. They have to be open to the public. Everything needs to be out in the open and freely available. But if your policy says that the financial committee is these people, then the people who were at the meeting don't have a vote. They have a voice, they don't have a vote. There's a difference. Funds. If you have dedicated fund lists, which probably most of you will not have, this needs to add up to how much you have money you have. And this is like not, I have a different bank account. This is like, $500 in my bank account goes to this one thing that we decided to set aside money for, and we haven't spent it yet. So like, I'm going to do, you know, pavilion repair, right? We've been saving money for pavilion.
And the Dragonflair Culinary Guild has a separate fund within the baronial fund. So
Yeah.
like guilds might do separate fundraising for certain activities.
Yeah, I mean, we use it when we were moving money every quarter, every month, saving up to get new cornets. I had a dedicated fund in here. And there's $500 in here, right? So everything that's not in a dedicated fund is general fund. So that's $1,400, and you'll notice that went from yellow to green because now all of this matches up to that. Oh, we spent some money. You have to remember, oh, we spent some money. We spent $300, so there's now $200 in there. So, you know, that would be $1,500. It's not so much moving here and there. It's really, you know, you're holding the money for something specific, which means you can't touch it. You're not supposed to touch it. You know, that kind of makes sense. Most branches don't have anything. And so they just have to remember at the end of the quarter when they're doing the report that this general fund matches the comparative balance sheet. I cheat with my canton because we don't do that because we're a canton. And I just say, you know what, that's going to equal that. And that always does it. I change that number updates. That's one of those, like, if you know you're not going to have dedicated funds, you can do that. If you might, don't do that. Newsletters, another one of the ones that we don't use anymore. This is from when we used to have, you know, a subscription to newsletters, and you had, you know, you had to mail it out, so people were paying for the stamps, and it's really not used a lot anymore. I think there's one, Aislinn, there's still one branch that does this, right? In the kingdom?
No, I don't think so. I think everybody's gone electronic.
Oh, good. Excellent. Comments. This is your chance to have a chat with the people who are reading this report. So that's your reporting deputy, that's Kingdom Exchequer. This is like, you know, hey, I'm having problems with understanding how this works. Can we get some training? This is, hey, I started training my replacement. My term is up next year. This is just a free form comments form. Put what you want to put in it. There are a couple of extra transfers in and transfers out forms in case you need them. So if you're 9 transfers in here, if you get more than, what is that, 25, 30, 5, 10, 15, more than 20 transfers in, and you need to add another one, there's another one for you. You can get another 25. Same with transfers out. There's more, if in case you need to write more, in case you have written more checks, then you have the ability to put in a form because it all needs to be in there. And then we're back to the free form. This is, you know, if you need math sheets, if you need a basic register, you can use that. So this is the form that you're supposed to turn in at the end of the year. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to show you what I do and what most people do, because it's much easier and simpler. Share screen. Microsoft 365, share. So this is the Exchequer, the Canton's Exchequer Office 365 account. Now, if you'll notice, I'm going to scooch it down so I'm not zoomed out so much for those of you who need that. I'm in a private window in Safari or in Firefox because I have multiple Office 365 accounts. And then this way I can be logged into my work one on my main thing, and then I can open up a new private window, and it doesn't try to log me into my work account. I can then log into my Exchequer account. If you do that, that's really awesome when you have multiple accounts, if you only ever have one and it's for this, then don't worry about it. But I know when we made the switch early on, this was a big problem for people. They're like, it's logging in with my school account, it's logging in with my work account. How do I do that? You open up a private window. And yeah, so I have my little OneDrive where I keep everything. I keep all my bank statements. I keep the documents that I've done. That's like event documents, excuse me, scans like that. Historical is all my old stuff. We use US Bank, so I have paperwork to open US Bank, and I shared that because a lot of people were having problems getting banking going, and so this was like all of the tricks that we learned with the US Bank, and then all paperwork. So here is the actual form that I use, which is the older form that has journals. It has a branch budget form. It has a trial balance, which does all the math. You don't have to worry about that. But this is everything in the quarter broken down. Yeah, you can see how busy we are at the Canton. This was our Q1. We wrote a check for Madrona to help cover 12th night, and we earned interest, and that was it. And we didn't even earn interest in February. Anyway, down at the bottom of all of these journals are the codes. Now, when we used to do this training in person, Etienne would have this code breakdown and print it out as a separate sheet, because this is what makes the magic happen. So you'll notice like 12.1, 12.2, 12.3. Remember how I said that, you know, it was .1 for admin, .2 and .3? That's where you do it. I'll come back to that here in a minute. This form, and if you don't have access to this form, it's in the training collection of paper documents that has been shared with the Facebook group. I can share it again. You can get it. You can message me. You can send a carrier pigeon. We can get it to you. No big deal. It is a little bit different because of the way the tabs are laid out, but it's functionally the same. It's just laid out a little different. So branch, seneschal, exchequer, year, quarter. You know, look, it's old enough. I can still choose a cumulative. I can't choose a sequential. The older versions, you can still choose a sequential. Yes, I know my statement's all about. Thank you. Contact info is all still there. There's all the information if everyone wants it. It's publicly available on the Herald's page because that's part of my job. You can see here, my statement date is the end of October. I haven't updated yet because I'm slacking. And I have a check that I wrote in September that hadn't been cashed at this point in time when I did the stuff in October because Kara was slacking. Nothing? Okay, moving on. The Canton
Yes,
does not.
I slacked.
Yeah, you slacked because you're in the hospital. It's okay. The Canton does not have any secondary accounts, so I don't have to worry about that. But we do earn interest. So my interest is yes. So the only, and then secondary accounts is the same, balance is the same. I mean, it's all the same. I noticed that the web version likes to think that the last column on the right should be the first column on the left. So when I change tabs, it's all the way one direction. You see me have to slide. But see all of these, they're all pulling from the trial balance, which is pulling from the journal. So I don't have to go through and make sure that my math is correct, that the check I wrote for $19.12 got added in as $19.12, not $19.21. It helps reduce errors because you're relying on the formulas and the built-in features of Excel to do the the simple basic math. So what I will do is I will use this form throughout the year, using each of the quarters, filling it out, doing everything I need to do for the quarters. And then at the end of the year, when I know that Q4 is correct and I'm ready to turn it in, I will print this out. The downside of using the web interface is the print page goes to a PDF page by page. So I have Excel at home. I will download a copy of Excel. I will then print the form at work, because why abuse my home printer when I can abuse my work printer? I will print it out, and then I will open up the form that we're supposed to use to turn in, and I will fill in everything. Just, and you're gonna find, I have found, that's where errors are gonna find. So that's why I have a printout. I have a physical copy that I'm not worrying about copying and pasting and overwriting or whatever. I have a physical copy that I can't change with my pen and pencil. And then if it doesn't work, then I have to go back and figure out where I did a transposition of numbers, where I missed something. It does take a few more minutes that way, but I found over the long haul for the year, using this form throughout the year is easier. Now, part of any questions so far? Are all you guys feeling a little lost? No one's feeling lost? Excellent.
I'm tracking.
Good. And that's why I say like the form looks daunting, but it's really not when you break it down. All of these report lines here match up to the information on the balance sheet. 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. All of the yeah, I know my balance sheet's out of all of this breaks down into other things. Oh yeah, you can see, because I'm $1 off still, I don't have an ending balance that's correct, which is why I'm off here. I just haven't fixed, I gotta go fix it. All of this information in the income statement matches up with usually other tabs, or if it's not other tabs, it's going to be in the register. So like I have 100 on 19-2, I have 126.29. Well, that was because we had an event. 19-2, 126.29. So I filled it out here, and I put in the report line from the drop down here, and it filled it out here. I didn't have to track it down and remember to put it in this form when I put it in the journal entry. And I only had one thing, but we've had 3 events. That's $320 for park rentals over the course of 3 events in 2 different quarters. I didn't have to remember to do the math to say equals what, this plus this plus this, this plus this. Yes, Siobhan.
Unmute. On the journal pages, the last 4 columns just before the total on the right. Yeah, the
non-cash transactions.
Yes, do you use that? Because I've tried to use it and it just messes me up.
So hold on, I gotta cough real quick. This comes into man, I would like to state for the record, I am not an accountant. I am not a bookkeeper. This came from the people who are bookkeepers telling me to do it this way.
I remember about 15 years ago, Alonda was doing some trial runs and all the instructions were in accountant speak. So I had to ask, please dumb it down.
Yeah. So it has to do with the journaling entry for accounting. So the money, like this in this case, is our interest we earned. It's IB or 1B, which is cash earning interest. But you also need to have it in interest earned as income balance. It has to do with the two-factor, no, T accounting. Is that what it's called, Etienne?
The double.
T journal. T journal. Again, not an accountant, not a bookkeeper.
I get it. That whole double entry thing.
Yeah, the whole double entry thing. So there's one IB for one, that's the cash, but that's got to come from somewhere. So it comes from here as interest earned.
Oh.
Now, this is where it's actually pulling into here. Sorry. No, it was private account, wasn't it? No, it was balance. Here, because it's number 5, right? So that's where it's pulling it. And yeah, this income statement does give you what page things are coming from. And you'll notice there's no page entry on the interest earned because it's coming just from the journal.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. So the only thing that the web-based Outlook, Excel doesn't do that I found so far is this cool plugin that I have since turned off. Oh, no, it's still here. It was a date checker add-in. Like you could do it for the date. It would show you the calendar. I don't need the calendar. We used to say for training that there were shortcuts and formulas that were worked when you closed or opened the document again, which you never, so I used to say one of the things I used to say on my training was, if you have an error, close the document, reopen it, it will rerun all of those formula shortcuts. Not really an option anymore because the way Outlook or Excel does its online, the way Microsoft does its online thing for Excel, it still kind of works sometimes to close it and reopen it, but for the most part, most things are going to be figured out on the fly, like they're supposed to. Yeah, this version has the 11C. So I have in here that the miscellaneous populace did a guard gold fee sale, and we got $96 for it. And that tracks back to there. Because this I can't enter anymore because it's coming from that. So if you don't have Excel, this is a great way of doing it. And the great, like the nice points of doing it online is, one, I can share it. Everything is all in one place. When I change jobs, I hand over the account to them in my replacement. They have all of the history. We don't have to have this thumb drive that goes around. Now, the downside is you functionally only have one copy of this. You're supposed to have 2 copies of something. So what I have been doing is when I send my report to my Inlands Regional, I also then make a duplicate of the quarter report. So I have another version of the file. So now I have the running total for the year, I have from the previous quarter, and I have in my email the one I sent to the reporting deputy, and the reporting deputy has one. So that we now have 4 copies of it. Now it's all electronic, it's all on OneDrive. How you feel about that is something entirely. I know for my College of Heralds one, everything's in Dropbox. My second copy, as I move to my personal OneDrive, I then have 2 copies of it every month. That's up to you. This having 4 copies, granted, it's all in OneDrive, but 2 of them are in your possession and 2 of them one of them is in someone else's possession, and one of them is in email, which is kind of in nobody's possession, should be good enough. Someone can rebuild it. We had to rebuild groups information when we had a changeover, and the person who changed over did not leave in the cleanest of departures. So yeah, I keep all of that there. Now, when I go to the next year, I'm going to actually make a duplicate of this so that I can, yeah, over here, sure. I'm going to rename it just so I do not mess with. Now, so assuming that I have finished out the year, I have printed this document, I have transferred it to the one that I'm going to send to Kingdom, I have sent it to Kingdom, I am ready to start on the next year. I'm ready to start on 2023. So what you can do is you can either grab a blank document again and start over, or you can go through and just clean everything up. Cleaning everything up has its advantages, has its disadvantages. Starting over has its advantages and disadvantages. Advantages is everything is still there and you can see what you did. Okay, I know that this is now going to be 2023 and Q1. Now, I have now made changes, so I'm going to make sure to save a copy as 2023. So a corner beer. I'm going to do this just so that I don't deal with it later on, right? I now have the 2023 version, but it still has all 2022 information. So I'm going to go through every quarter and I'm going to just clean everything, right? Now this cash in bank, you need to make sure that the cash in bank for Q4 of 2022 matches what you start with in 2023. So like I know, for example, according to this, I have 34, 34, 83. So 34, 34, 83. Boop. Now that is going to be a little weird because that's one of the white places, one of the few places that is not blue that you can change. Don't recommend getting in the habit of trying to change the white ones because you won't be able to. So I got to go through Q1, Q2. Hey, don't do that. Q3. And Q4. Trial balance should all be messed up. Contact info shouldn't change, but because we've made it switch to 2023 Q1, it now lets me know that, hey, my membership is going to expire this year. And it's going to expire in the next quarter because that's how I know it's yellow. If this was Q2, this would be red right here, letting you know, hey, you've expired. You're no longer, warranted. You might want to fix that. There's going to be, while you're doing this, get back here. While you're doing this cleanup, it's going to be messy and it's going to be a whole bunch of things throwing you in errors because it still has a whole bunch of information, right? And that's okay. Just realize that it's going to do that and realize that as you're going through and doing all of the changes that you're going to miss something. I mean, just chances are pretty good you're going to miss something. and just so like make the change, do the information, set it aside, give it a few more minutes, and then come back to it. So while I have 3 minutes left, and Kira, you were right. I'm sorry, that did take me a whole hour. Does anybody have any questions with the report?
You please.
Clear as mud.
Excellent.
Alessandra had questions.
Yes. I actually had one from earlier when you were
Way back when.
Yeah. So you were showing us the ledger that you pulled down from sca.org,
Yes.
and that one didn't actually have a register. Then you pulled up the one that's on OneDrive that has the quarterly registers. I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. It sounded like we are supposed to turn in the sca.org as
So
our
from
year end, or is that our quarterly?
year end, the only report that is required to turn in, no, quarterlies are required.
Mhm.
The quarterlies are a chance for the reporting deputy and the Kingdom Exchequer to make sure that you're not A, lost out in the weeds, B, doing something completely wrong, or C, just in over your head. Because if you have to do the entire year in one chunk, it's more work than if you have to do just a quarter. So, but the year-end reports are the ones that get sent up to society or get, yeah. So you can run both of them if you want to. For a while there, some of the branches were like running both of them every quarter, and then they would send me the official one, and I'm like, I'm okay with having the one that we're not supposed to use for Q1, Q2, and Q3. Q4 needs to be the form from the society. That makes sense?
Okay.
And the only reason I say that is because the form from society doesn't have some of the error checking, some of the, things that help you along the way.
Mhm.
So if you use the one that we used to use from society with the quarterly stuff as your Q1, Q2, Q3, and then Q4, you've got the error checking, you've got the correction, you've got the ability to see a little bit. Like I can go through and look and see at the trial balance if something isn't right, and then I can use that to track back where you're missing. And I have this whole like thing I used to do on errors and reporting that isn't really valid anymore because of the changes that we make. But a lot of it has to do with not making the transition between quarters correctly, not changing your dates, which you're not going to see that as easily on the new society form that you will on the old society, or the one with the bank statements or the bank information.
Okay.
So I think what happened was society decided they didn't like the form that we use that integrates the journal activity into the report. And so that's why we go ahead and we use the one with the integrated journal activity, because it's way easier for our branches, way easier for you throughout the year. But when it comes time to submit that final report to society at year end, society will only accept it if it's on the most recent version from their website. That's why you have to key Q4 into the newer version of the report.
Okay. Thank
That
you.
help
Ellen.
explain it a little bit more?
Yeah.
And Alessandra, in January, I do like I'll sit online all day, and just if any Exchequers want to come in and get help because something's not balancing out or something like that, we usually do that at least twice in January before the reports due.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think I had been told about the one from the society page at all. So I was,
Right.
That's new.
Well, and it is new because I mean it was 2020 when they said no, you need to use this form. Okay, Sorsha, can I just check? And I'm sorry this went by so fast. Where does the Zoom subscription cost go if it was reimbursed to our seneschal. And second, is our storage locker monthly rent an event-related cost? Whew, okay, so I'm gonna do this one at a time. Your Zoom subscription cost is a fee, technically. So you can do it in the fees and honoraria as a pass-through. You wrote a check for, what is it now, $29 for a year to, awesome seneschal for Zoom as a reimbursement. It's not an event fee. I mean, it's a straight fee. Storage locker monthly rent is an event-related cost. It depends on how you see event-related costs. If you are using it to store old files, old reports, and that's it, that's office and admin. If you're using it to store Eric Rope's loaner gear, your pavilion, that's all the event-related because that stuff's for the event. So in that case, that's a judgment call. My judgment would say, if I'm using it for events, I'm using it for storage or events, I'm going to charge it as an event-related item. NMR check that you write to the SCA Inc. It is an in-kingdom, although coming from Canada, Kira, how do they, that's a question for you, Kira.
I don't know, because I counted it within kingdom. Georgia, does it get counted within kingdom on your report?
It's not. It actually gets counted as an outside because it's coming across the border.
So it's a donation.
Yeah.
I just noticed in the fine print at the top of that tab that it said within the same country, and I was like,
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
I
so
will
do I
change my
mark it?
deposit slips.
in the columns that I'm marking is it a transfer outside of kingdom then for my
Yes.
outgoing balance? Okay. Thank you.
Your dog agrees.
Sorry,
All
he's kind of vocal.
All right, any
it's okay.
further questions before we go on to the next segment? Then I'm going to turn it over to Aislinn for, she's gonna be covering things to watch for fraud in our checking and savings accounts, and then what is needed for when she gets asked to submit audit stuff.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not as technologically savvy as everybody else here, so it's going to take me a second to figure out where that button went. There we go. Okay. So things to watch out for. So fraud on your account. The society as a whole has been having numerous issues of fraud on accounts. It has affected everything from individual branches accounts to kingdom accounts. It's been altered checks that were stolen out of the mail that got altered and tried to be presented for cashing. It's been electronic debits from somebody stealing the account information from a check to attempts at fraud over the phone or via email. So it's been a wide range of different fraudulent activity that's been hitting up the society as a whole. So you want to make sure that you're watching for that when you're balancing your account, making sure that anything that you see that came out of your account is truly something that your branch did. If it's not, you need to make, sorry, my dog's really vocal. Make sure that you're notifying your branch as soon as you discover it, making sure that your coronets and your seneschal know about it, looping in your reporting deputy and the Kingdom Exchequer so that we can follow through. We actually had one branch that their check was stolen. The people that stole it used it to do a transfer out of their account to pay off of a credit card that they had in the branch's name. So, I mean, it was an extensive fraud type of situation that required a police report. Those are things that you would put also in that comment section. If you had discovered fraud in your account, you would want to notate the date that you discovered it and the steps that you took so that it's documented in that report that you're sending up. We had a branch that had an event that when they took the gate money to the branch to deposit to the bank to deposit it, there was a counterfeit bill in it. So they obviously lost that money. That's another thing that goes in that comment section is, hey, our branch received a counterfeit bill. You know, they're circulating, especially as we get closer to year end. People are worrying about holidays and everything else. And after coming out of the pandemic, when money was tight for people, things are getting a little wonky. Other things to watch out for, the balance of your checking versus your savings account. You should not have all of your money in your checking account unless you use all that money every single year. So what you should have in your checking account should be the money that you are going to reasonably expend for your big event, with the rest of it in savings. That way you're earning interest on it, and it also keeps it a little safer from those fraudulent activities versus the check, because if it's in your savings account, unless your bank does something that they shouldn't, which is have it set up as an auto transfer, which you're not supposed to have auto transfers, that'll protect that extra money. So it limits the amount that you have the potential to lose. And usually in a fraud situation, the bank gives you your money back, but still then it's harder to work in the confines while you're waiting for the bank to finish their review and all, make their determination and give you those funds back. It is my understanding that society is trying to find a way around us mailing checks to each other. So, but they haven't figured out what solution they want for that yet. So there'll be more information coming on that in the future. As this fraud picks up, they've realized that mailing checks is not the best way to handle it. And so they're trying to find another way, but they're not sure exactly what way they're going to go with it yet. The things that are needed for audits. So when we have an outside company that audits the SCA, and what those auditors do is they come in and they do a random sampling of different things from all of the society as a whole. Events that have large deposits tend to get pulled for those audits, things like Ursulmus, Autumn War, Interwest War. But other things get requested as well. Like this year, they asked for bank statements and bank reconciliations for the first quarter for multiple branches. They asked for deposit records, deposit receipts, any check remittance, any proof that that deposit actually happened for large dollar deposit donations. They asked for check records. They wanted the check request form and any backup documentation that proved why we paid that money out. And they don't give us a big window to fill it. You know, we get it and they say, okay, you have 2 weeks to get it to us. And so that means that I get it, I have to forward it to you guys, you have to get it back to me, and I have to forward it to them, all in that 2 week period. And then sometimes they come back and go, do you have anything else? Like, well, let's see what we can do. And they're just trying to prove that we are being good stewards of the society's funds and that we're not doing anything that we shouldn't be doing. So when you get those requests, it's not that you've done anything wrong, it's just that they have decided that this is one that they want to look at to make sure that we've followed the rules that are in place. A few other reminders. Please make sure your warrant is current. The Crown signs off on our warrant register twice a year, at 12th night and at July coronation. So it's important that we make sure that it's current for them. And also, if you don't have a warranted Exchequer in your branch technically is not a valid branch. Make sure you're reviewing the signers on your account to ensure there's a Kingdom representative on your account. It's either going to be a previous Kingdom Exchequer, current Kingdom Exchequer, Principality Exchequer, or a previous Principality Exchequer. Those are your typical Kingdom representatives that should be on your account. And please remember that your bank account form has to be approved by society before you can make any changes with the bank, which means it comes to me. I make sure that we filled out all the boxes. I forward it on to society. They do their thing and they send it to the bank. And that has to happen before we can go into the bank to make any changes to it, because it's the society's money. It's not the branches. And they want to know who has access to their money at all times. So we have to make sure that we do that before we make any changes. So if you're thinking about changing banks, make sure you get that information, that request over as soon as possible, because it takes anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months to get it back from society to the bank.
Alessandra, yes, that does include signers.
Yep, that includes changing your signers. I was gonna get there.
Okay.
She asked the question. I was,
I
being
did.
nice.
Because we're having problems. We still have Elowin on our signing sheet. And we need to switch our Exchequer or our Seneschal, pardon me. But we're having problems because our chronicler is not writing minutes.
So
Well-
as a financial officer, you can write those minutes. Your chronicler does not. Your financial report is run by you. Your financial meeting is run by you. So your chronicler does not have to keep those minutes. You do.
I thought changes had to be brought up during a regular business meeting.
No, financial meeting.
It can be a
Financial
fun, so
meeting.
here's the breakdown. You can do a financial committee meeting,
Mhm.
and the thing that we found out with US Bank specifically, and it seems to work also with Chase, and some other banks have seemed like that, is there are certain terms that they like better than other terms. They
Mhm.
have no idea what Exchequer or
Right.
Seneschal or whatever means. And honestly, even for a while there, we used to do like treasurer and VP of operations. They don't, it's not even that. It was because you are doing the reports, you are, oh, what is it? I got it written down. I will find it and I will send it. I will share it. So give me a few minutes, but there are certain terms that we use. Give me a few minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just going to say that I changed the Money Guild's signatories last year, and I was the one that created the report that I gave to the bank, and I'll send you that as a go by too if you want it.
That would be fabulous. Thank you. I obviously was under the impression it had to go through a regular business meeting. And since those minutes aren't happening, it was taking that much longer.
Side note, they need to happen.
I understand.
For them to be a branch, for you guys to be a branch, but that's another issue entirely.
That's not my wheelhouse. And it's being handled, but it's good to know it can be done in a financial meeting.
Technically, it is your wheelhouse because you are responsible for the branch just as much as the Seneschal is. And just like Blathanor, we haven't put out a newsletter. It's my wheelhouse. I want to make sure that my branch stays active. So you want to make sure your branch stays active as a CFO. It is your responsibility to make sure that the Seneschal, communicating with the Seneschal, that they're getting the stuff done too.
Okay.
It's kind of a tag team kind of thing between you and your Seneschal to make sure that everybody's doing the things that are required to keep you as an active branch. So I talk really fast, so it did not take me 30 minutes to cover what Kira wanted me to cover. Does anybody else have any questions about anything that we've covered so far, or any random questions about things?
When there's an audit, does that reflect on the Canadian branches as well?
You know, I've only had one audit that I've participated in for Society so far, and it did not touch any of my Canadian branches.
It does not. They don't audit Canada.
Perfect. We're a little island all to ourselves.
Yes, you are.
Do we want to talk about my brain's not functioning yet. Who's in charge and who you actually as the Exchequer report to? A lot of people seem to think that you report to your Seneschal. You don't. You report to the Kingdom Exchequer. You are a partner of the Seneschal in the duties and the financials. They have some set of the power in the branch. You have some set of power in the branch, but they are not your boss. She is. Aislinn is.
So do we not go to our principality Exchequer first before going to
Well, yeah.
principality?
Yes. If you have a principality extra, you go to the principality extra. But
I was going to say, I think my principality Exchequer might be upset if I start talking to Kingdom and not letting them know what's going on.
Yeah, there is that.
It's the same idea when I send out NMR invoices. I send the principality Exchequer and the branch Exchequer that invoice. So that way the principality Exchequer is aware. We started that a couple of years ago because they wanted to be aware and on top of the NMRs coming back in through to the kingdom.
Cool.
And your principality, Exchequer, Greta, is great. She is constantly in contact with me. She sends me updates on your reporting for the branches there in Tier, and forwards any questions that she doesn't know how to answer. She'll forward to me for me to try to dig in to find an answer for them. So she's in constant communication.
Thanks. Yes, she is. She's had a good mentor, and she's doing a wonderful job.
If nobody else has another question, I guess we can move on to the next section.
Never mind. I'll wait till the end.
Why? Ask now.
Well,
You
no,
got
it's just
time.
it's in regards to the NMR and gate sheets. So
Oh, that's coming up. So
yeah, like we'll wait.
So what about, I can bring up the question that I brought up to you, Aislinn, which is what if the group or principality has something within their inventory that they want to sell, say to another group? Are we going to cover that at all? That would be a good question to cover really quick. You're on mute, my dear.
you just love to put me on the spot, don't you?
Everybody puts me on the spot.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with selling assets to other branches, as long as both branches can agree on the value of the item and it's above board. Obviously, you know, if you were gonna sell a 4-year-old trailer for $100, we might have some question about that. I mean, what's wrong with it, kind of thing. So we want to make sure that you're not pawning off stuff without there being full disclosure of what's the word? It's condition.
Like you're trying to undervalue what you're selling to them. Right. Yes. I get it. It makes sense.
But there's no reason that you're required to hold on to stuff indefinitely, or just if you want to dispose of it to somebody outside of the SCA. In fact, in 9 times out of 10, it would probably be more beneficial to another branch in the SCA, like branches that have old castles that are deciding they no longer want those. The odds that they're going to find a person outside of the society that needs a castle kind of slim. But you might have another branch that regularly wants to borrow it or rent it that may be willing to purchase it. That's perfectly legitimate exchange of asset. You pay us, we give you the castle, you now have to store it. It's not our problem anymore. So it's all about what the branch wants to do with that asset, why they want to get rid of it, what its purpose was, and how they're going to how they can dispose of it in the best way for all involved.
By the way, that is actually a real scenario that Stromgard's going through right now. That's why I asked her to bring it up.
And that's why I picked castle.
Thank you.
Okay. So anything else? Or are we ready for Kira to start gate seeding?
Why don't we take a 5-minute stand up and stretch?
That's a brilliant idea.
And while you're doing that, I'm posting to the Facebook group a PDF I wrote in 2018 called How We Did It US Bank. And that was my walkthrough that I did to the Exchequer mailing list when we had that, for what I did to get things going with US Bank, a copy of all the paperwork that I had, as well as the words of the actual words that the bank wanted, which is vice president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. With the important bit being that only the secretary can provide notes. So Alessandra, if you do this as part of your financial committee meeting, you have to be an acting secretary. So just keep that in mind.
When I did mine with Columbia Bank, I went ahead and wrote up the notes, and the president and treasurer both signed the notes to turn into the bank, because that's what Columbia Bank requires.
Yeah. Yeah, so they wanted president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. And you can have multiple acting secretaries, because only a secretary can technically, according to US Bank at least, only a secretary can provide minutes to a meeting.
Okay, so to clarify though, because this has to be approved by society, we do the minutes, we send it to Aislinn.
Yep.
And you forward it to
There's a form that you will have to send to Aislinn that has like the information about the bank, the information about the signers, whether they're being added, removed, changing, or whatever. She approves it, sends it off to corporate approves it, and then here's the really crappy part: they fax it.
Or they'll email it now.
I was
They
thinking,
did now. Oh, excellent.
does society even care about the notes? I mean, at least the
Society
two times.
doesn't care about the notes. The notes
Yeah.
are
Society
specifically
just cares
for
about that
your-
form, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you can do these in like, you know, at simultaneous tracks, but the bank is going to get the form. And now what I would do when they were faxing it still, since the bank didn't have a fax machine, I would have them fax it to me, and then I would take that into the bank with, you know, the form. And there's this little letter on SCA letterhead with the, you know, corporate seal that says, hey, this is, you know, to authorize that these people can open a bank account under this name. Here's my signature and corporate stamp.
Yeah, but that was for opening an account.
It's the same for
thing for
changing. the
Okay,
same- Yeah.
Just want to clarify.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so for the
So we
changing,
don't
it'll say
actually
these are the
start-
authorized.
We don't actually start filling out the bank's signature form until after Aislinn, after society.
Yep.
Okay,
Hey, Alessandro, I sent you the form too, the bank.
I
account.
saw that. Thank you, Orontius. I appreciate it.
Okay, hate to be the Canadian here.
No, we love the
No.
Canadians.
So with the president, okay, so we're kind of in the same process ourselves. Our principality has asked us to leave the bank that we're at and go into a bank that they want to, and they want to do a lot of it online, not personal contact. So how does that work with society? If
So
we
you-
need to get society's input into,
Actually, Duncan,
yeah,
that's why I'm trying to find somebody at the local branch to talk to me and say, can I put your name on this form so that our corporate office can send you a thing?
And it can be really challenging. I've been working to get the Kingdom account changed since October of last year. And it took me until July of this year to finally get the bank to understand that I needed a physical person with an email address for society to send that form to.
yeah, because I've been a little over 2 years as seneschal trying to get our bank changed.
Yeah.
And now I've stepped down from being seneschal and I'm contingency exchequer with Siobhan. And with her trying to do what she's doing, we still haven't had the bank change. And we're coming into year 3.
Right.
When I was the baronial exchequer for Wastekeep, I had 2.5 years of being the exchequer without being on the bank account, because it
Wow.
took, there was so much, and then, granted, this is like 2014, 2015 timeline. So there was a lot of back and forth with, at that point, Bank of America, may they rest in hell, that they wanted everyone to be there all at once who was going to be a signer.
Mhm.
And that was a little difficult because some of the signers were, in Seattle, and we're in Tri-Cities, and I'm in Walla Walla. For those of you who don't know the difference, that's 300-mile spread amongst them. So, and then we did all the thing, we turned it all in, everything's good. I'm thinking it's great. I go do something in a different branch, and they're like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Well, they're like, you're not on the bank account." I'm like, "Excuse me, what?" So I went back to the branch. They're like, "Yeah, I remember you doing that. I don't know what happened to the paperwork. So let's do it again." I'm like, "No, no, and no." So it can be painful. You can get around it to a certain extent. I mean, you can do all the paperwork as the Exchequer, and then have the people who are signers sign the check. And I didn't say this out loud, but the bank doesn't care who signs the checks.
Question, have you worked with Dame Elena on this? And the reason why I bring it up is when I was Kingdom Exchequer, it was acknowledged that the Canadian financial institutions operate very differently from the US ones. And Society, I believe, had her as the Canadian banking rep who was
Yes,
supposed to
they
help
still
with
do.
this.
They still do.
Yeah, is she able to help at all with the process?
She is on the paperwork. She's actually not directly involved because she has stepped away from being an officer for Principality. She's doing other things for Principality, but she is, yes, still the Kingdom representative for Canada, for Tier E anyway.
Hmm.
And the biggest problem we've had is I personally have had some personal and health issues over the last little while. And previous to that, I guess they didn't know what they were doing. So anyway, I'm trying to clear it up and still.
No, we were kind of a lost cause through the COVID change.
Oh no, and to be fair,
And trying to get to the bank when it's, it's all shut down. I mean,
yeah, and to be fair, most of society does not understand how to deal with branches outside the US.
it's actually very straightforward. I've done bank changes before, and it's just a matter of remembering to get this thing from Society, because previously there was a lot of in-person stuff, and the whole getting somebody from Vancouver up to Prince George to sign on a bank account, that's not happening.
Yeah, well, and it's like, from the College of Heralds side of things, Drachenwald's Kingdom Exchequer has been trying to fix their Kingdom account for the last year and a half. So it's not just Ontario, it's not just the US, it's not just US and Canada, it is banking regulations worldwide, and how the corporate entity of a California corporation deals with nonprofits in other countries, as well as subsidiaries, as well as and how we're not doing nefarious things with money and drugs and laundering.
Having the mothership in California means we do have an awful lot of red tape to wander through.
Yes, there's that as well.
Would that be because people get funny about money?
Oh, nice callback.
Oh, nice. I was wondering when that was going to come in.
So good. I was waiting.
Gold star for Kira. I have to step out for another meeting, but I'll be back.
Okay, and it's 11:01, so we can move on to the next section.
Oh, wait, we didn't do our 5-minute stretch.
Oh yeah, but after this, you can go get some lunch and take a half-hour break.
Oh, all right.
And come back and just chit chat for a little while. So I'm gonna share my screen. If I can figure out what's there. Okay, so I was asked to cover gate seed and your gate lead. Normally I'll teach classes on PayPal and gate and all that other kind of stuff. So it's probably going to be less than a half hour. So gate seed, so your gate has been chosen, your gate lead's been chosen. So what do you do next? Will you be running PayPal at your event? Is the event big enough to use PayPal or PayPal at gate? What are the risks and what do you need to get set up? So it's up to the branch to decide if the event's big enough for PayPal. We have a feast every year. We use PayPal this year for the first time. And it went really well. What are the risks? That would be your PayPal fees. You figure we had 150 people. We paid about $107 in PayPal fees on top of the fees for the feast. So if you want to run PayPal at an event, you would need to fill out the PayPal form, get it signed by the Exchequer and the Seneschal, and then send that up to the PayPal deputy. I'm not going to cover anything more on that. You'll have to take my PayPal class for that. Gate classes. Has your gate lead run gate before? Because if they're a seasoned gate person, you can kind of just let them go and say, you know, here you go, have fun. Let's communicate on what you need for gate. Can you hold a gate class before for others to learn? And do they need a PayPal class? And if they need a PayPal class, you need to reach out to Kingdom to see who could teach that class, or if you could teach that class if you've taken the PayPal class. Approval, your gate lead needs approval from your financial committee before they can run the gate or take funds for the gate or take the gate seat. This needs to be noted in your financial meeting minutes before that. So as soon as your event staff begins to have, you know, set for your event steward begins to set their event staff, you want to make sure they get that gate lead noted in the financial meeting minutes that this is running gate, because they have to be approved, not just by you, but by the financial committee too. So prepping before the event. What gate paperwork will be needed? So who's going to get that gate paperwork? Is the gate lead going to get that gate paperwork together? Your gate sheets, your child waivers, your site waivers, your non-member waivers, your horsey waivers. And then who's going to make that signage for gate that's required to be at gate? The corporate COVID statement, and I think the harassment statement needs to be posted at gate and site when anybody comes through gate. So, and now gate seed. When should that gate seed be requested? I, as an Exchequer, want it requested to me before the financial meeting or the business meeting before the event, because I want to have time to get those checks together before I walk into that business meeting to be able to give out that gate seed. Then check request needs to be either written out to the gate lead or the event steward. The Exchequer should not be pulling gate seed for the event. It is up to your gate lead or your event steward, if your gate lead doesn't want to be responsible, to have that check written out to them and for them to go to the bank and get that gate seed. Any questions? I actually can't see the question thing.
None so far, you're good.
Okay. And now this one I was going to kind of make a, oh, there's a chat thing came up.
Can an Exchequer also be a gate lead for a baronial event?
No, you should not be a gate lead for a baronial event. I've guided gate, but I've actually, if I guide gate, I don't sit gate in any way, because money, go back to the statement I made, people get funny about money. You've got to have everything at least 2 deep. So, I mean, I guess if it comes down to nobody else is stepping up, you can work with your seneschal and the two of you can make sure that gate is covered. And then you guys can count and close out gate with the event steward. But as much as possible, you should not be that gate lead for your own baronial event. I've been gate leads for other baronials, for other baronies, and for kingdom events. And then, so how much should that gate seed be for? So how big is the event, and is there odd pricing? Most of our events run where, you know, it's $25 or $20 or $30. So where should you be pulling to have to be able to give that change? I usually do, if it's between a like 100 to 150% of that, I'll do $300. And just tell them to pull it all in fives. If it's a big event, like Autumn War, I've done gate seed between 600 and 900 and pulling it all in fives or in tens. I did have a Exchequer ask me about their event. It was a feast and it had weird pricing. I told her 300 because it was under 150 people, but she ran into the problem of it was an odd pricing and she had to give ones as change. And so she should have made it for a little bit more and gotten more ones for that change instead of fives. Anybody else have any ideas? Anything they want to chime in? How much you guys use for gate seed?
No, but you probably should make your events in increments of 5. It's just easier.
It is just easier. It was a weird thing that they had done. I don't think they'll ever do it again. See, I told you it was going to be really quick. It's like it's kind of a personal choice on how much you want to pull for gate seed. But especially if you're, but always make your, if you can get with the event steward and your seneschal, I would always make your gate fee in that increment of 5. So you only have to pull 5s and 10s. Alessandra?
Just checking the verbiage on gate seed, point number 2, where you say the exchequer should not be pulling gate seed. Just to clarify, that means the exchequer's name should not be on the check.
Correct.
They take it to the bank and they pull the cash.
Nope. Either way, you should, it should always go to your event steward. The check should always be written to your exchequer or to your event steward or to your gate lead. That check should not have your name on it, and you should not be going to the bank to pull cash.
Awesome. Thank you.
Siobhan?
Hi, Duncan had to step away for a couple of moments and he's got some questions.
Okay.
We had an issue with the layout of the gate sheet regarding NMR. We were treating it like the NMS in that it was a deduction as opposed to a reduction. Like it was very confusing to have our gate fee being like 20 and our member fee being 15 because there's a reduction, as opposed to once upon a time we had the gate fee at 15 with the NMS on top of it. And we were having discussions about, you know, if it's going to be taken away, you know, shouldn't it be on the other side, like just as an intuitive thing for the gate staff?
So do you have I can manipulate those. Torkel can manipulate them. It's a personal preference. I like to do the +5. I do the site fee and then I do the +5 for NMR. It's easier to calculate for me.
Yeah.
So it's a personal preference. Torkel,
Part of the reason they changed from NMS to NMR I think what I remember was that they didn't want to have people who weren't members feel like they were being punished
Yeah,
for not being a
surcharge.
member.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't want the surcharge for it. So
So membership gets a reward.
yeah. So I mean, I have those gate sheets. They are Microsoft documents. I can send them to you if you want. If you want to, make adjustments and tweak.
Yeah, that'd be fabulous because I've actually done it myself and they always end up looking like somebody used whiteout on them.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Also, he had another question about how to properly use the child waivers. And I don't know what he's asking about there.
So the child waivers, they come in single and they come in multiple households. If a child is not a paid member and the parent, because if a child is added onto their parents' membership, it's like $5 extra. The parent signs a blue waiver form, checks the box with the SCA. If they are not a paid member, they should have a child waiver. That child waiver has to be signed at gate. So if I'll keep copies of a single child and then I keep copies for multiple children in the family. So that way the parent only has to sign it once instead of filling out the form 15 times. But it has to be every event that has to be filled out when they come through gate.
Yeah, because they're all dated. So
right.
And Kira, honestly, I stopped doing the single form just so that I don't have to have two sets of forms in the gate book, and I just do the multiple form. And if they only have one kid, they only have one kid. Multiple, one is a multiple. It's just a multiple of one.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Thorkill, do you still have a SharePoint site with all your forms and stuff that you collected?
All of that was on the Inlands regional page, which I'm no longer the Inlands regional, so I would assume it's still there. I can probably figure something out and get those back up in public again.
Alessandra, I know I will take and write on my child form that the parent is on, gate sheet 2, line 15 or 13. I will often, and then when I pull my gate sheets, because Blathlenor uses the envelope method, yes, that child waiver does go in with the gate sheet itself.
Hey, Duncan and I are chatting, and I believe he was asking, we've got some clarification here. I think he was asking about the medical authorization, and he was just trying to get clarification on that. And my understanding is it's not a waiver. Gate staff does not keep it. What we need to do is see it with a copy of the legal guardian or adult ID, whether it's a driver's license or whatever, as long as the signatures match and the pictures match and that kind of thing, we can say, yes, we've seen that this person has the medical authorization to hand off this child if there is an issue or something. And I believe that's what he was talking about. And it's not a waiver, and we don't keep those things at gate. We just need to know that they have them for safety issues.
Correct. The medical waivers, very rarely do we ask for them unless a child is coming on site with somebody who's not their parent. But I remember even my kids, when I was on site, my kids carried a copy of that medical waiver in their pouches. And then we always had one at camp just in case. But if they're coming on site without their parent, you need to have that letter. I know in Washington State, if it's been, I can't think of the word, where you go get it authorized. Notarized. You don't have to have a copy of the parent's ID if it's been notarized.
Yeah.
But the medical waivers do not stay at gate, and neither do the notes saying that the child has the child has the right to be on site with that person. And Pernell, I do see your questions.
Yeah, that was my understanding. it's just good to bring it up because I have gone through gate stuff afterwards after an event and I'm going, oh, we've got somebody's medical authorization here. We shouldn't have that.
Pernell's question is, if the gate lead is the one who cashes the gate seed check, then why do the gate lead and the exchequer count the money at the beginning of gate? It seems redundant. And the count between the gate lead and the exchequer makes the exchequer have to get to the event before the gate opens. So it doesn't have to be the exchequer. It can be your event steward. It can be somebody who is it could be the seneschal. It can be anybody who's a blue card, as long as you're authorizing that you're bringing that the bank gave you the right amount of gate seed, and that you're going over that with somebody who is volunteer, who is a blue card, and you're verifying that gate seed is correct, that, well, I wrote the check to you, and that way we know that you're bringing the same amount of money back for that gate seed. But we also get that when you return the gate seed. So it's just a too deep thing. It's not, I mean, I can't get to all my events. I've had my gate leads, they've verified it with their event stewards, as long as it's just verified that it was the correct amount. And Sabina, I'm sorry if I missed it. Do you ask if the children coming through gate are with their parents or if they're bringing somebody else's child? I think they've just seen folks assume they are with their parents. I don't ask. Most people will reach out and ask what they need to bring a child that's not their own before an event. I've never really asked when I'm at gate, and I don't know if anybody else does. Torkel, do you ask?
No, I really don't. I slack.
I don't ask, because if they have a card, then I know it's their child. They're putting it down within the family, and they have to show me the card. If they're filling out the waiver, I see the names and they typically match. I mean, I guess sometimes if I catch it, if it's a different last name, I might say, are you a step parent? Or sometimes.
Kira, you had another question also from Sorsha. It says, can an exchequer also be gate lead for a baronial event?
Oh, I had answered that during my thing.
Yeah, that does.
No.
No problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
A bad question, because you can be a gate lead for a baronial event, just not your own baronial event.
Right.
Yeah, it's specifically my barony I was asking about.
Like I said, and often you don't get the volunteers. So and if you don't get those volunteers, then you have to figure out a way around it. I'll do pre-reg, like PayPal pre-reg, because it's all on spreadsheets and it's all being verified by the ePay deputy. And then, if I get checks in the mail, I go over to the seneschal's house and I show him all these checks before I go to the bank. You've just got to have, I'll do gate lead for an event I'll put out that spreadsheet for everybody that's going to run the event, but I don't ever write the check to myself. I always do it to the event steward, and she brings that gate seed, and then we count it and we set everything up together.
Great. It just in our baronial financial policy, I'm responsible for ensuring there is a gate lead for the events. And so I wanted to make sure that didn't devolve to me being responsible to sit as gate.
No,
at
you
all
should
events.
never be
No, and
that
in fact,
person.
for separation of duties, you shouldn't sit the gate ever.
Great.
So that there's a clear, bright red line of separation of duties.
Understood.
I'll sit gate, like I'll be at gate as that second voice or reason, because I like gate. I like saying hello to people, and
you
I
sit
like being that
gate?
person.
No.
Yeah. And I'll be that voice of reason, or I'll sit gate when it's a pre-reg because I'm just signing people in. But I don't sit gate and take money at gate unless
Understood.
there's a second person there with me. Any other questions? So let's go ahead and take a break. Grab some lunch. You're free to, come back here, chit chat and everything, but we'll pick back up at 12 o'clock to start back up with Alina and Chamberlain stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you everybody for attending, and hopefully we'll get through the rest of the day quickly. Kind of and any questions you guys have. And like I said, in January, I always host for end of year reports, at least 2 sessions for help. So if there's any report questions, we'll get you covered. See you in about 30 minutes. 6, so if we want to get started.
We'll go ahead and talk about what your Chamberlain can do for you. So really what a lot of this comes down to is things that we've all talked about earlier today. And, you know, how regalia is not going to necessarily be tracked any longer based on the reporting that the exchequers do. So we actually kind of started this process a little bit earlier, back in 2019, actually, at 12th night, when it was down in Eugene, right before COVID started. And we started making a few subtle changes to what's going on. Your Chamberlain should be like one of your best friends, one of the people you can trust the most, somebody that can actually reach out to you at any time. They are the ones that they're going to help you with all the things. They can, depending on what title you want to use, based on what's in the Exchequer handbook, you can have multiple parts to be in a Chamberlain. You can have these jobs separated out, but this is someone that can assist you specifically with all the responsibilities that have to do with what you as a group or a principality have. So the Chamberlain on tier is specifically responsible for the physical assets of the group. They have accountability for everything that you guys maintain, anything from, it goes all the way down. And I'll get into that on the next page. They've definitely got to be open and completely honest with you as the exchequer with all communications. I mean, Aislinn and I have this like ultimate Facebook chat that goes back and forth sometimes where I go, oh, this is missing. And we just shake our heads. And then we get lucky and 3 weeks later it shows back up. But it's one of those things. That's one of the things that your Chamberlain, equipment master, stock master, whatever you want to call them, does for you. And you can separate it out into very different jobs. Some of the changes that we've made is that they're going to have to be really good at maintaining data and keeping track of everything on a basis. And I know that for some of the groups, they have significant stuff that they've retained in their storage units. And eventually all that needs to be detailed out, pictured, and sent up like once a year up to the kingdom. And that's one of the things that we're asking. For anything having to do, in order to help the exchequer out, one of the things your Chamberlain can do for you is they can be the first contact to help identify, is something missing? Is it something that we really want? You know, do we want to put out bids for it? Any of that thing can all come up within the office of the Chamberlain. They should be a part of your financial committee. And they should also be willing to head and chair anything that you guys have for regalia purchases too, even if it's like regalia or inventory. So it could be any of the above. And just to give you an idea, here's some of the responsibilities. And by the way, I took all of these out of our current Chamberlain handbook that was done in 2008. So back in the day, in 2008, when this was written, one person was in charge of all the inventory. They also kept track of all the regalia, property, and bids that came in. They kept track of all the maintenance and repair, all the donations that came in for the kingdom, insurance certificates, lease agreements, which I'm going to go over in just a minute because it's something that has not been followed. That is actually a society policy that will help better ensure for all the regalia and inventory that you have. Your Chamberlain or regalia person can chair any regalia committees that you have going on. If you guys want to put in bids for stuff, they also can keep track of storage. They'll help you keep track of the vehicle registration. And also they can help with the repair schedule. Part of their job is to keep track of the repair schedule. I personally am super duper lucky. I have Wolfgar as our current Teamster in the kingdom, and he is awesome. I don't even have to keep track of it because he does it for me. And he keeps detailed records that he sends directly into Aislinn. You can also help with chairing any asset disposals. So say you guys have a coronet and you decide you want to retire it, you can chair the committee. That would also help do all of that. And, if you want, you can actually help with the award medallions and charters, trying to keep track of, how many medallions are needed for this, how many are that. These are all things that a Chamberlain, equipment master, stock clerk, keeper of regalia, all these are things that you can get deputies for that can help you to make your life easier. So you as the Exchequer you're not having to do so much of the work. And then there's quite a few reporting requirements that actually have never been followed through on. So a lot of things that happen within the Chamberlain, they should be reporting, they should be reporting what they're doing to the Exchequer at least a week before their quarterly report is due. A basic updated report of what the Chamberlain office and what the regalia inventory, what's going on with it, should be put into the report for the Exchequer. So where we've changed this is, as of 12th night 2019, it was announced in Curia that there will be an annual report of inventory that will be done and sent to the Kingdom Chamberlain once a year for archiving purposes. What this is it's not anything other than, we're a historical group. We are the worst at keeping pictures and documentation of our own goods. And this is just something to do to help us. It will also help you, when you want to come back later on and say, oh, I don't remember what that looked like, or, oh, the computer crashed, which is actually what happened to me. When I took over the position of Chamberlain, I actually tried to get a bunch of information that was lost from Maestra Ula. And unfortunately, her hard drive crashed on her computer. And anything that she had, any pictures, any documentation, it's all gone. It's all lost now. And so that's why we're proposing, and I really want to get feedback on this particular part from you guys. There hasn't been a determined date of when this report should be turned in. And this report, I'm thinking around May. And the reason that I'm thinking of this is because this way, this gives you, it doesn't end up, overlapping with your doomsday report. It also gives you the months of March, April, and part of May to go through and document the stuff that you do have. And I'll show you guys that in a few minutes also. But I really want to hear from when do you guys as Exchequers think is a good time once a year to send in this report? And then one of the other changes that we made is that all copies of all insurance certificates are going to go up to the Kingdom Chamberlain. This was a change to Kingdom law that was made just this last May, just so that you guys know. One of the things that we need to do as a Chamberlain or stock clerk or whatever you want is we should actually have lease agreements on hand for all the regalia and all the goods that people have in their current possession. So if you're a champion, you should have somebody that will have filled out this form. And I'll show you the form too, and we'll go over that, because the next part of what I have is mainly the report and also this lease agreement. What I found out, and let me bring it up really quick.
Ilana, Sorcia's got a question.
Oh, you might
Oh,
be
it's
able
not
to
popping
answer
up on mine. Go ahead and tell me what it is.
I was wondering if there's a defined format for the report that you want for inventory. I just
Yeah.
conducted
Yeah.
an inventory with our team in August that covered the last 3 years of not doing inventory at our storage locker.
I
But
do.
turned it into a PDF with photos and
Oh
shots
no,
of shelving units. So
I'm-
I don't know.
I'm
what to
gonna
do.
make it a little bit easier for you. Whoops, hold on, wrong screen. So this is an interesting thing. So this is one of those things that people have not been doing, but really need to be doing, is lease agreements. So it kind of, why? Let me exit out of this. Give me just a second. Here we go. Let's see if I can do it this way. There we go. So this is one of the things that has actually been in our Chamberlain policy. However, it's been one of the things that people have not been doing. Just because it's always been that way doesn't mean that this is the best way for us as a society to not follow certain policies. In this particular item, this is taken directly from the Exchequer's handbook in chapter 6. What it is that the SCA as a whole doesn't really have insurance coverage for any regalia or equipment that we have. However, what we do encourage, and I've been trying to encourage since I stepped in, is that we have lease agreements. And we actually have a lease agreement that is in this handbook that I actually just uploaded to the Exchequer website too. What it is that we should, for anybody that has any piece of regalia, we should be having them fill out said lease agreement. Let me know if you guys can see the Word document.
Can you make it bigger?
Oh, I'm gonna, yeah. So what I did was I actually uploaded the PDF copy. I mean, yeah, the PDF copy, but I'm actually in the process of trying to change this into a live working document for you. So this is something that the king and queens have always had to fill out for years and years and years. What this is this is the official lease agreement that comes directly from the society that people are basically renting the goods from the SCA for like $1. We have never collected that $1, and that's another discussion that we're having on the back end. But what this does is it allows the people, they can take this. So if you're a baron and you have a coronet that you're keeping at your house and it's worth $3,000, if you don't have this form and you don't get like a writer on your house while you're in possession of these goods, if anything happens to that, you could be totally 100% liable for the cost. And we don't want to do that. That's not something that we want to do. Or if something gets lost or it gets stolen, all of these things can be used. And I use these myself. This is actually one that I did. I've taken out a few things because it's my working document. But like in when I got all the goods back from the Crown Prince and Princess, I have this. I have forms that I keep for myself with myself on file. Technically, these are supposed to be have digital signatures on them. However, one of the things that I have run into is that not everybody has access on a PDF to do a digital signature. So I do have a disclaimer at the bottom that, you know, if you're using this form and you're emailing it to somebody, and this should come back with pictures, that by filling in the green script, that this is a digital signature for electronic, to be able to have electronic communications. Huge thing that nobody in the kingdom has been doing since, I'm thinking 2009. But this is one of the things, like as a principality exchequer, your principality chamberlain should be having one of these filled out at every single changeover that you have. I actually just sent this over to Her Excellency Diana so that she could use this for this weekend, as Summits just had their 11th night yesterday. So she could go through and she can take pictures of everything, and then she has this on file. It doesn't have to come back up to me, but we should keep it on file and actually recommend to them that depending on the duration of their reign, they should definitely go and maybe think about getting a rider on their house insurance or their apartment insurance. I know I hit you guys with a lot with that one, huh? And the other thing that I wanted to show you was the form. So I'm not going to take credit for this form in any way, shape, or form. I actually got it back. I actually got this from a different principality, and it's such a good thing to use that it's kind of hard not to use it. So this is what I'm currently using, and I'll add a blank one of these to the group, to the Facebook chat group. But what this is you can go through and you can either embed or you can copy and paste a picture in of what the object is. You have options. You can go through, and if you want to just keep one tab, you can keep one with all the official regalia. It's got principality, loaner stuff that you retired. It has the quantity. You can put in a description, a picture. You can put in the category of what it is. You can put the condition that it's in. You know, you can put in here, do you have a lease agreement on file? Has it been cleaned? Any tips? I have this with their current majesties since July 2022, just as an example. You can go in here, you can update this if you know who it was donated by or created by, you can update it here. And you can put the date that they actually donated it over. I just use these as examples. I have a couple different tabs because of the amount of royal regalia and inventory that we have. I have stuff, you know, like this one. This is all the stuff that I would keep that's in the royal trailer. I have all the champions regalia donated out here, you know, where the location is. I have a list of all the stuff, and let me make this a little bit bigger. I have stuff that has all been retired. So this currently is in my possession. That I will eventually change this as soon as I actually transfer it over to Orontius to put into the storage unit. And then I also have this kneeling pillow, and that's also with me. Banners in the trailer. This is the old not too sure why it says that. This is the old orb that we had, one of the old rods that we had. This is one of the old Kingdom seals, which this was retired back in 2020. However, in talking to a few people on the financial committee and also talking to other people, the seal is still good. It's still in great use. So what we've done is we've actually donated this to Duchess Ludwiga, and it's back in use for all of the different Kingdom stuff that she's doing with all the seals, because she does do specialty stuff with it. So it just helps her too to have that to match some of the older charters that we have if we're making seals for them. The scepter, the old scepter that was actually decommissioned and has been made into other stuff. Our old chairs. I mean, you have things that you can put all over. I also have an in progress file just for my personal use, just to know that, you know, these crowns, they've been obviously given back. So, and the boxes that were redone, the scepters being redone, all those things you can keep on this report. And I'm happy to upload this to the team, but this is what I've been using. It actually works really, really well. The more pictures, if you embed them, the bigger the file gets, so you might not be able to transfer it around. I suggest keeping it on something that you, as a Chamberlain and your Exchequer, always have access to, always. And those were the two main reporting things that I had.
Any questions for Elena?
Elena, this is Alessandra.
Yeah.
On your presentation, you questioned whether we thought the end of May was acceptable or useful. And I wanted to say that I do like
You think
the end
it's a
of
good
May,
idea, huh?
because it means that you have some potentially dry, sunny weekends that you can pull everything out of your storage unit, take
Exactly.
photos and put them back.
Yeah, even at September Crown, I didn't get chances to take pictures of everything that's in the trailer. So I'm still building my form too. It's going to always be an ebb and flow. You know, it's always going to be a working document for you guys. It's constantly going to be in use.
Right, but I like end of May because, like I say, it does give you some sunny weekends to work on stuff, where if you wanted it end of the year, it's kind of mucky out.
Right. And that's the whole point.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I don't need to see like your guys' repair schedules that you guys are keeping track of. You know, I just want to make sure that you guys keep track of them, tracking requests for new regalia, property bids. That's going to be a different class. We're actually working on a Chamberlain track so that we can help with all that stuff, along with what all the society requirements are, because the difference between the two is kind of interesting. The way that it works, from what we've found out, is that if we have something that somebody puts in a bid for within the kingdom, it doesn't matter what the value is. It has to go through the financial committee. If it's $1, $250, $500, it doesn't matter. Anything has to go through the bid process and through the financial committee. Some of these, I have to admit, if it's under 250, I think we were chatting within the financial group. Can we just present it and say that we okay it? There's little things that we're still trying to work on. And Duncan, yes, I've been working on it. I have the old Chamberlain handbook that I have over here. Oopsie. Let me show it for you really quick. I have been working on this on things that need to be updated. Like the stuff I have highlighted here in yellow on the old handbook. This is all stuff that is now different offices that I have to update, along with the changes that were made at last May Crown. So I still have a few more updates to do, and then I will send this over to Aislinn and the whole entire group to review and update. A lot of the things that are in here are like personalized to who's taking care of it. And we don't really do that anymore. Like it used to be that Master Conover did all the Pelican, Laurels, Joms, Silver Lily, Silver Rose. And I just don't think we need to have it in here per se for a specific person, because every time that person changes, we will have to go through and update it. There's a couple things that I am making suggested changes on, just so that everybody knows. I don't think, one of the things that worked really well in Rifkin and Sven's reign, as an example, is that we actually did a sign off for all the good physical goods that they have. We did it via a Zoom meeting that we recorded. This actually worked out really well, although doing a physical inventory is always best, so you can get great pictures of everything, because we do want to update the pictures as things start to get older. We want to, notate how it was. We also want to notate the wear and tear. But I think doing Zoom and team video meetings for sign-offs for some of the Chamberlain stuff is great too. I'm all about what we need. And yes, Sabine, I think you're right. For a smaller transfer of the records, making it a printable PDF would definitely work for that page.
Our Chamberlain took everything that was in our trailer and he did a printable PDF. And when the trailer is loaned out to an event store, because he doesn't move it from the site that it's stored at to the event. So he has, they go through, do a visual check when they open the doors, that everything's visual where it's at. So that way they can put it back correct, how he has it organized in there. And they sign a sheet to basically check that out for the event.
Yeah. And here's something else I learned from Orontius too, is that if you per se would like to loan out, say you have a member wedding. I'm going to give you a direct example. They're having a wedding. They actually want to borrow the baronial pavilion and they want to have it at their wedding. You can change the dollar amount in here to whatever the rental agreement is, and you can use this as a loan for them too, while they're renting the equipment from you.
Really, it is 12:34, and then we started a few minutes late. But if you are done, it would be Orontius's turn.
Hello, everyone. Bear with me. I'm a little loopy today. I'm on cold medication, so some of this may get a little disjointed. Let me share my screen and grab when I was. And let me go up to the top here. And my subject is, first subject is financial committees. And a lot of this we already talked about earlier today. So this will probably go a little fast. And what is a financial committee? It's the financial stewards for your branch. They are concerned with all assets, both money and stuff, as Alina was talking about, held in the name of the SCA. As we learned earlier, the SCA as an entity owns all our money and all our goods. And the financial committee is, like I said, the steward of that and are responsible for making financial decisions for your branch. Who are the members of the financial committee? Of course, the warranted, the branch seneschal, and the branch Exchequer, the warranted branch Exchequer, are the first two and the most important members of the financial committee. And then the third member is needed to make an odd number of votes for any vote that's needed. Usually it's if you're in barony, it's the baronial couple, the cornets. It used to be that the cornets could have one vote each, but we're just looking in the Society Financial Policy. It does state now nobility has to be treated as one vote. They can't split up. Which going into explanation, that's so that there's not an undue influence from the royalty, which makes a certain amount of sense. A financial committee can be any number of people determined by the branch. It's interesting as you look around just the Puget Sound area, between Dragon's Lair, Madrona, Bluffton, or Glenmere, we all each have a different culture, a different way we like to look at everything, which is kind of interesting if you go to branch meetings and events and such. And I say that because that determines how financial decisions are made. In some branches, the populace really doesn't want to see the sausage being made. They don't want to know the financial details, so they leave all decisions to the committee alone. In some branches, everybody wants a piece in that decision. So at the very minimum, you have to have the branch buy-in, input. In some cases, especially in smaller branches, every populace member has a vote, which could get difficult at times, but that's all determined by the process you've laid out for financial policy.
Orontius?
Yes.
Before you move on, this is Alessandra. Could you present this in slideshow so it's a bit bigger?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Oh, let me.
It's only because I do them all day long that I knew to put it in slide mode position in that forum.
Right. Is that better?
Much. Thank you so much.
Much better, bigger.
All right, sorry about that. And feel free to jump in, ask questions, challenge my points here. This is coming from a lot of years of background, so I may not necessarily have caught up to all the most recent rules, although I did a review of the Society Exchequer's handbook just the other day. Make sure I wasn't extremely stupid.
Sabina says, should this be in our branch financial policy, or is it already a Kingdom Society policy?
What specifically?
Sorry, that was there was a bit of a conversation in the chat. I was asking, should the same theory about not wanting the coronets to have two votes because it's one household, should that apply to the other members of the financial committee? Because
yes,
having like
yes.
Definitely.
Okay. And is that already in Kingdom or Society policy, or do we need to put it in our branch financial policy?
It doesn't hurt ever to put it in your local policy, but it is stated in the Society handbook.
It isn't. Okay, thank you so much.
Right. And I'll repeat that. Some branches don't want to see all the fluff in the financial policy, and some people are really detail oriented. It depends on what the branch as a whole and the people that actually use the document what works most for them. And other people have talked to financial policy. There's a set format to how it goes, but the details are really up to the branch. All right, financial committee responsibilities and purpose. The committee sets up the policy and approves all financial activities. It's a budget, not only the branch budget, the event budget, and any other expenditures. If you want to buy a pavilion, if you're renting storage, if you want to do a special project, it all has to flow through the financial committee for review and approval. And you have to have a committee because you don't want one person making all the financial decisions. You need the transparency and everything. And I'll repeat the same thing. If people are funny about money, the more transparency you have, the better everything works. And the Exchequer has the most important role on the financial committee. The Exchequer has an understanding of all the rules, both modern, SCA, Kingdom, branch. They've at least reviewed all of this documentation, have a working knowledge of what is allowable and what is not. And they're the final authority for that. And for committee as a whole, though, works together to make sure that they follow, the branch follows the financial policy. All right. And I've talked a lot already about the financial policy, but it sets who is actually on the committee, how long they'll serve, how they'll meet, how they'll make decisions, who runs the meeting. Usually the Exchequer is supposed to run the meeting, and that's how it's usually laid out. But sometimes they have a financial committee secretary who runs the meeting, so the Exchequer can concentrate on what's being presented. There are multiple ways of how to set this up, and it's really, like I said earlier, up to the branch what works best for them. But the important thing is to have it delineated, outlined, and spelled out as much detail as you think important, so that others can read it and understand the process you're following. And more on the policy, how things are approved under normal circumstances and emergencies. Sometimes you have to make a decision quickly, and the financial committee will meet online, on a phone call. They'll run to the local Starbucks and make a decision on an emergency basis, and your policy will say what kind of decisions that can be made in an emergency and how they're advertised to the branch later. The financial policy determines the reporting requirements, of course, and how it itself is maintained. And that's talked about elsewhere, but I just thought it was important here because the committee reviews this often, is always cognizant of what the financial policy says. All right, and the more on the financial policy, how we control cash, income, outflows, how the base rules are for admission charges, complimentary passes, refunds. The financial committee can make changes to that as part of a committee meeting process, but your policy sets the standard that the committee follows, and then any changes from that the committee has to allow in a committee official meeting, and then mention in the minutes. And of course, the policy is mandatory for all branches. It doesn't matter if it's a guild, shire, barony, whatever. Any branch that handles funds has to have a committee and a policy, even if that committee is 3 people. The guild master, the Exchequer, and 1 member. They must have a committee and a policy. All right.
I have a question. I've actually never thought about this, but does the sergeantry fall under a guild type thing?
It could. Do they have their own account?
They don't, but I know that they've had funds held by another member for things.
Are those funds privately held, or are they part of the SCA funds?
They're not part of the baronial funds.
All right, and we're dealing with that right now, is that we want to create a separate account that's not SCA funds, so we can use it to give to non-members who want to attend events. So of course, those funds cannot touch an SCA account.
Yeah, I have one of those going on too right now.
Right, but you still want to, because of the transparency thing, people are funny about money. You want to develop a financial policy for that too. So it makes a certain amount of sense if the sergeantry, especially if there have been financial questions in the past, to set up a financial policy. It can be very simple.
Gives me something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, but back to this statement though, financial committee is supposed to make things easier. If that financial policy just makes it more cumbersome and complicated for the sergeantry, you know, that's something to look at as well. All right, and who's on the committee? Of course, we have the requirements of the Central and Exchequer, and if you expand on that committee, make sure those people actually want to be on the committee and will be involved. And if they never show up for meetings, if they don't do their research, if they're not interested in the decisions they're making, they shouldn't be on the committee. And it's something to take into account. And that can be difficult for smaller branches. If you're a branch that has 5 or 6 people on it, and you need people on a financial committee, it's sometimes it's a tough consideration. The committee makes decisions, but they need to ensure that those decisions are the will of the branch. That transparency thing. If the branch is unhappy with what the committee is doing, they'll make their unhappiness known. And if they start writing letters to Kingdom, etc., your life is going to become more difficult. So make sure you are doing what the branch itself wants to do. You may have reasons why you make decisions that the branch doesn't like, but make sure that you're understanding why you're making those decisions in clear detail to the branch why you're making the decisions you are. I talked earlier that the financial committee, some branches do not have to have the financial committee itself make the final determination. The entire populace can do that. In those situations, the financial committee can be the filter. They can collect financial requests, do diligent research, be able to talk to the branch about details of what they found out, ensure the branch looks at the larger picture of what the branch has in its budget, what it has to spend for the rest of the year. Is the expense that they want to take on going to affect what they're going to do with everything else they have going on? And then conversely, like I say at the bottom, some branches, they don't want to know what's really going on. So they want the financial committee to make all the decisions for them. All right, financial committee meetings. Most branches have their committee meetings happen on the same night, same day as the business meeting itself. The Exchequer usually runs them, usually before or right after the business meeting. Either the Exchequer takes minutes or they have a secretary designated to take minutes. And that's important. You want to have a record of any decisions made, and those are auditable. Sometimes Kingdom or Society will ask for minutes. I think at one time I was asked for some minutes, but I can't remember. And then any emergency financial decision making must be published as minutes, official record keeping. Make sure those are recorded. All right, anybody can bring financial questions or consider actions for consideration to the committee. You don't have to be a designated person. It doesn't have to be the Exchequer. Anybody can. That's why the financial committee meeting dates and locations must be published. And then things to consider when discussing financial activities. How are they decided? Is it a vote? Is it consensus? Is it just a financial committee? Make sure that any decisions are made with fairness and objectivity. Sometimes decisions can be contentious, and if you have to work through them, or even not make a decision that day and regroup on that. You got to look at the big picture of how this financial consideration is going to affect the branch. Does it support it? Is it going to affect another event? And then, is the activity being proposed contradictory to the purpose of the SCA. That could be a broad range of activities. And then I talked about earlier, allowable versus desirable. If the financial request you're making is something everybody wants to do, but it's going to affect long-term plans, you got to debate that out. All right, and this is just a page I pulled from the Society of Financial Policy. It basically covers everything we've talked about. I just wanted to put it in here. Now I'll put this slideshow up on the Exchequer Facebook page for everybody to just take notes from. Let's see here. And that was it for financial committees. Any questions? How much time did I take up there?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. All right. Do you want to launch right into budgets?
Any questions? We are, just remember, we are going to discuss financial policies with LON next.
Oh, all right. You're going to do LON first and then go into budget?
No, if you want, maybe. Do you guys want to do LON? Or if you're ready, we can do financial policies and then bounce back to budgets. That way we kind of keep running with it. I don't care.
The agenda you posted said financial committee, budgets, then policy.
Yeah.
I'll just do budget. I'll run.
Okay.
All right. All right, then that pulled this from the Society Exchequer's Handbook, and it calls out budgets right in the first paragraph of the first page of the handbook. You help create and maintain both annual budgets and event budgets. The importance of an exchequer. Budgeting, and I'll show you a budget in a little while. This is a spreadsheet essentially that shows everything a branch wants to spend during a year and how it's going to generate income to support all those expenses for the year. This spreadsheet should, the Exchequer puts it together, but the Exchequer presents it to the financial committee and the branch. They'll go through it, compare it to what was spent in previous years, and to ensure that adequate amounts have been assigned to each office, each activity, each event. If they want to add things to the budget, if there's a special request, you want to buy a pavilion, you want to add a new event, an officer wants to go on a training session, those kind of things can be built in the budget up front. And event income and it's kind of difficult right now with the COVID years of developing what kind of income you're going to get, especially with expenses the way they've been. But you can get a baseline from years before COVID to build in what you expect income to be, to run off of for your budget for the year. All right, I think that's all I'm going to say on that one. Actually, I'm going to forward to I just wanted to show a budget that I pulled from Dragon's Lair here just as a visual aid. I have a lot of our big ticket items like the storage unit, our PO box rental, and then breakdown of events and for expenses. Because some of them make a huge difference. You know, June Fair being a $20,000, this is 2019, $20,000 deal that we need to be prepared for. And then I have all the offices down here, and then a few extra things like training, regalia, etc. All right. Bear with me a second. All right. All right. Budget set up what in advance what you're gonna spend. If the seneschal needs to make copies or have doing a lot of mailing. If this isn't a budget up front, this is not something you're going to have to approach the financial committee on a continual basis to ask for permission. You have it in place. And then reimbursing receipts there. Same thing, as part of the event, if you have the event already set up in your budget, regular expenses will be part of that budget. You do not have to go to the financial committee for each and every expenditure to get reimbursed. It's already part of that budget. And the big ticket item for budgeting is the event budgets itself. That's usually the one I gravitate toward. Based on past years' experiences, you can create what you expect income to be and the usual expenses, site rental, if you have an outdoor event, BIFFs and such. And the branch financial committee will look at the budget you put together for that. And if they've done their due diligence and research, they've compared it to past years. I will ask any questions on anything that looks out of ordinary or they don't understand. And then down bottom there, I have the note here about the event steward working with the branch Exchequer, who has previous budgets and has the knowledge and experience to help set that event budget up. Yeah, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, so make sure to ask questions, all right? And I think I just went through everything. Yeah, that was fast. Anybody have questions?
No, looking forward to being able to read this on a larger monitor.
Yeah. All right, and don't hesitate. Like Kira said earlier, if you have any questions, put it out on the Facebook page. We all as a group learn a lot just from the questions that are asked. Sometimes those of us who have many years of experience learn new things just from the discussion. Our new ideas are generated. There are no stupid questions, so please ask them.
Rontius, I guess I do have a question. We just went over our draft budget for next year in Wywood. And I got some advice from Sarah de Bonneville, who's been a past Kingdom Exchequer and branch Exchequer. Her recommendation for our events was to essentially zero them out, have the income and the expense match.
Why?
It sounded like because then any way you can lower the expenses for it equals profit.
Yeah.
That's reflected then in the actual.
Yeah, and there are different philosophies on that. In Dragon's Lair, I'll use Dragon's Lair as an example. That's where I'm from.
Right.
June Fair is our huge money maker. We get $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 of profit from June Fair, and it runs everything.
Mhm.
So we actually do come pretty close to zeroing out because we want to charge the least amount we can for site events. So we look at June Fair differently than we look at every other event. And it's basically a philosophy of how you want to look at the big picture of income and expenses. What works best for your branch? I don't think Wywood has a big ticket event like that. So you have to look at the overall picture. So Sarah might be right to look at every event as a zero sum activity that you want to balance out for the entire year.
And then on operational items, it sounded like if it's something that you have to pay anyway, basically. So PO box, storage unit fees. Do those need to go beyond having agreed on the budget in front of or to the financial committee?
No. If you have put that in your budget at the start of the year, you have your amount, and the budget itself has been approved by the financial committee and the branch as a whole,
Mhm.
then it's an expense that's expected, and so you just pay it.
Right,
Okay.
but the one thing I would say is send an email out to your financial committee and say, hey, this bill's come, I'm paying it. Because what you don't want to have happen is that you've made the decision on your own to pay this.
Mhm.
Yes, it's all agreed, we will pay this, but just say, hey, it's come in, I'm paying. Does that make
Got it.
sense?
I bring it up in my financial meeting, and the financial part of our meeting
Mhm.
before the bill is due. Like, I pay my storage unit, we pay the storage unit every 3 months. And if there's going to be an increase in the storage unit, which has been happening everywhere, then I bring that up and just, okay, there's been an increase in the storage unit. It's a $40 increase, and I'm writing the check for the next 3 months, and this is how much it is.
Right. That's actually one of the expenses that came up that had to be paid on December 1 was our storage unit. And I saw the invoice from the vendor. And I don't know why I didn't make the connection in my brain that it was only a 1 month amount that they were charging us for. But we've typically paid it in 6-month chunks. So I let them know, but made the decision to pay it for 6 months.
And they're right. Transparency has been mentioned multiple times
Mhm.
today. So there's no such thing as too much advertising and things like that.
Got it. Thank you.
Sabina says, we were told in training years ago to try and save up to cover the cost of 2 years expenses for our most expensive event, just in case something happened. So working to have at least some profit is a sound practice for accomplishing that.
Oh, yeah. I know from having been Seneschal and Baroness, we like to see the bids list out profit, but the budget is kind of a different animal.
It's Sabina, like I in the middle.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, we do, when I do Bothanor, I go ahead and I list the profit, because I know that that profit is also paying for the other things going forward. And I make sure that it's listed as revenue, and the revenue and the expenses on the report. So Orontius, does that clear you up for budgets?
Yeah.
So we're ahead of schedule.
I knew
Any
mine would-
questions about anything so far?
Alessandra again, sorry.
No.
Like I said, I've only been in this for a couple months and still figuring things out. The budget gets sent to Kingdom, yes?
No, the budget,
Or just within the branch?
just within the branch.
It is an auditable item, though.
Right.
If you're audited that year, the person doing the audit can take a look at it. I'm sure it's approved by the financial committee.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep mine, and so in that one copy of the report that has the journals on it, it also has a spot for your budget. And I keep mine with that and turn it in quarterly to the Kingdom when I turn that report in.
Okay.
Ellen, are you ready? Is Ellen?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm ready.
Okay.
Hang on. Let me share my screen. And put it in.
Make it bigger.
I'm trying. Hang on. Got stuff in my way here. Here we go. All right. Is that better, folks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. So Master Orontius gave us lots of really good information on what should go into a financial policy and how to manage financial committees. And we've established that you need to have a written policy for every branch. So the SCA actually has minimum requirements, minimum things that must go into everybody's financial policy. And there's 14 items. I think we can get through these things really quickly because Orontius has actually explained a lot of what these things are. So, and all of this is available in checklist form, so don't feel like you need to scribble notes frantically because I'm going to talk rather quickly here. And I will post a copy of that checklist to the Facebook page, and it is actually on the Kingdom website already. So the very first thing that should be on your financial policy is the composition of your financial committee. Who are those members? And as we mentioned before, we do recommend an odd number. They must be paid members. I would also add in there, if you are, there are some branches that have their financial committee is everybody who's in attendance at that particular meeting when decisions are being made, which is fine. But you should have a mechanism in place to track who are paid members and are their memberships current. I don't know how you do. I've heard of some branches where they have a yes and a no pot and everybody tosses their membership card in each one and they count them out that way. Other people wave them in the air, whatever works, but you should have, if that is the way you're going to handle your financial committee, you should probably address how you're going to approve general populace voting as members. You should also list what are the terms of those financial committee members. Is the term concurrent with their term in office? If it is somebody like, let's say you have a populist rep who does a specific a time on the financial committee, what would be the time frame for that person? And then what are your methods for choosing new members, if that even applies? Depends on, again, on the structure of your committee. You also need to spell out the timeframes and the methods for your meetings. How often do you meet? Where do you meet? If you are going to allow Zoom meetings or have electronic meetings, this would be a great place to insert language to address that. That might be new things for many of us. Prior to COVID, I don't think any of us had any language in our policies to address electronic meetings, but that is a thing that's happening more and more often now. So also you need to spell out what your timeframes and your methods are for action approval under normal circumstances. How does the financial committee make decisions? What timeline will be used to complete the financial committee review and a decision for normal action approval? That would be normal stuff. And then, of course, you also need to address what are your methods for providing approval for emergencies. Even going in so far as to define what constitutes the need for emergency approval. How the financial committee is notified of the emergency action, how they will conduct an emergency vote to address the action, whether it's going to be in person, via email, via Zoom, and then how and when will the populace be advised of the emergency action and vote. And of course, whatever is decided here does need to be published in the next, in the meeting minutes of the next financial committee. So the next thing that society wants you to spell out in your policy is what is the reporting schedule for your branch? It does differ between regular branches that are not in a principality and principalities. So I've just kind of listed that out here. For most on-tier branches, essentially your report is due 30 days after the end of the quarter. And it looks like on the principality side, you guys have about 6 weeks from the end of the quarter. So. And let's talk about what due means. In order for you to have fully submitted your report, that means you need to have sent the report via email to the Kingdom Exchequer and the regional reporting deputy, or on the principality side, the principality exchequer. So you may have policies for submitting those reports internally. You as Exchequer submit it to the seneschal and the coronets and the rest of the populace. You could spell that out also, but you also have a reporting requirement to then escalate it forward to Kingdom as well. So you should also spell out the reporting requirements for your branch. And so that means what exactly is included in a report, such as we've discussed, there's the actual report format. You should be submitting your journal activity or your ledger. Sometimes some of you are using the one that integrates the report and the journal activity all into one, which is pretty slick and easy for submission. If you have been granted a variance, any sort of variance, you should be noting that in the comment section of your report. And you should also be submitting bank statements for all quarters. So you need to spell that out in your financial policy, that this is what constitutes a financial report for your branch. So this is a biggie, only because it doesn't happen as often as we would all like it to. And that is, you need to put in your policy, what is the time frame to actually review the policy and revise it. Society says it should happen every 2 years at a minimum. I think most of you are probably wincing right now when you realize that it's been longer than 2 years since yours may have been last reviewed. Never fear. Now would be a good time to do that and to review your policy, update it to meet these minimum requirements, get your populace and your coronets, if applicable, and your seneschal to agree to it, and then you send it on up to Kingdom. And it is really important that the Kingdom Exchequer receive a copy and that they're able to review that new revision. All right, so this section here is society wants you to insert very specific language that details your methods for controlling cash receipts. And I've actually inserted it here. I'm not going to read every single line of this. The actual language is also in that checklist that will be made available to you. But basically what this section does is it defines exactly what a cash receipt is. It's section A here lists out a minimum deposit requirement of how often or how long you can hold on to receipts before you have to deposit them into the account, into your bank accounts. Section B also says that you can't use another person's credit, like PayPal account. And you can only use online credit card acceptance services that they've approved. And as far as I know, it's just PayPal at this point. There might be others, or SCARs. They allow us to use, society has their own credit card acceptance service as well. The next section also defines that minors may not serve as gateheads. We do allow, I believe, minors age 16 and up to sit gate, maybe even younger, provided they have adult supervision, but they cannot be gate leads. And all that other fun stuff. Section D also, again, just spells out that a paid member must be in charge of all gate functions. All right. The next section is society wants you to spell out what your event admission charges are, refunds, or complimentary passes. So if you have a refund policy, you should be spelling that out. If you have deadlines for when a person can request a refund before no refunds are issued, you should be spelling that out as well. And then you should also detail out who do you habitually comp at events. And remember that only a paid member can be comped. You cannot comp people who are not paid members. Are there any questions so far? I can't see the chat, so.
Nothing in the chat so far.
All right, so just let me know if anybody's raising their hand.
Alina, did you have questions? Alana?
Nope.
So the next one, number 11 here, is a policy regarding asset management and control of inventory, including a trailer policy. And Alina gave us lots of great information on that. So now would be a great time to write into your financial policy when you will be completing your inventory. Who inventory is reported to. Not only are you reporting your inventory internally, but as we've established, you also need to report your inventory up to the Kingdom Chamberlain. If your branch owns a trailer, there's also very specific language that needs to go into your financial policy to address the trailer. I did not put that here because it's super long, but again, it's also in that checklist for you to insert if it applies to your branch. Okay, no-nos. So society also wants you to spell out the prohibited activities, raffles and online auctions. Remember, if it involves a game of chance in any way, you probably cannot do it. And I've seen, even in my time as Kingdom Exchequer, I've seen some really creative attempts to try to get a raffle to fly by calling it something other than a raffle. And bottom line, there was still a game of chance there. So you just got to be real careful with that. And then fireworks. Of course, we cannot purchase fireworks for our own fireworks displays. However, you could, if you wanted to, engage a professional service. So this specific language just gets plunked right directly into your financial policy. All right, policy on sales tax. If your branch is located in an area of the kingdom that is required to collect state and local sales tax, we don't have a lot of those. As far as I know, Idaho is the only one that does, and I think we're down to one branch in Idaho. But sometimes we hold events. A Washington state branch may hold an event in Idaho, and you just need to be aware that there are sales tax requirements on event admissions. And you need to contact your Kingdom Exchequer so that she can get in contact with society's tax person and get the proper forms and whatnot. And then what has happened historically has been the branch then will pay the sales tax owed directly to society. Society then will pay the sales tax to the state of Idaho on behalf of the branch. And this last one, special purpose and dedicated funds. You have to identify the policy, and you need to include these three basic things. The fund name and description, what its primary purpose is, what its secondary purpose is. Oh, typo. Sorry about that. And when it will expire due to inactivity. And I can't stress enough how important it is to really have a sunset date or something to indicate what happens when the fund is no longer needed. Our Raven Travel Fund is a fine example of, oops, how'd I go back? Oh, well, we're going to stay there. Raven Travel Fund is a fine example of one of those funds where we can't change it now because one of the original authors has passed away. And we're kind of stuck with it. And there was no language in there that would allow us to make any changes to it. So it's important that you have that information in there. So after you have listed those first 14 minimum requirements, then you can add in anything extra that is important to your branch or indicative of special things for your branch. This is a great place to put your PayPal policy. If you want to use PayPal, you have to have a policy. And there's your Kingdom Exchequer can give you lots of really easy language you can insert and use for just that purpose. And that is pretty much it. So this checklist that I just went over with you, it is on the Kingdom website in the library under Exchequer resources. I will also put a copy on the Facebook page. Here's something that I recommend is when you send your report, your policy into ACELN for review, that you include the checklist. with it. It helps her. And that you put each of the clauses in the order of the checklist. Your Kingdom Exchequer will be so thankful if she doesn't have to hunt through sometimes a very lengthy document to make sure every one of these 14 items has been met. But if you just put them in that order to start with, it makes review much easier and she'll be happy. Probably less inclined to find stuff too. That I know I got a little bit pickier if I had to hunt through somebody's financial policy. Another thing that I would really recommend is that if your branch has a customary, that you separate your financial policy from the branch customary. It really isn't necessary to have financial policies and procedures in the customary. They're kind of two separate things. And all too often I've come across cases where language in a customary may contradict or cloud the actual financial policy. So it's best to really make them two entirely separate documents. And again, if you're having any trouble addressing something you want to put in your policy, you can either contact your Kingdom Exchequer or also reach out to a neighboring branch. The odds are they've got that same situation already defined in their policy, and they can share language with you that you can tweak to work. And that was it, guys. Any questions?
So I have a follow-up for you, Elowen.
Mm-hmm.
On the prohibited activities at the last BOD meeting, they added cryptocurrency to the list of prohibited things. We are not allowed to purchase, sell, engage in cryptocurrency of any fashion.
Wow,
So
that's speedy.
Yeah. So do you know, is there like an updated checklist out there? This was the most recent one I could find.
Not that I know of. They just,
Okay.
like I said, they just made that their last BOD meeting decision, and they sent it out to all the Kingdom Exchequers for
You know, I did hear about that. I'd forgotten about it. So yeah. Okay. No Bitcoin, guys.
Nope. Sorry.
Jada, you muted. No? Can't hear you.
Took my microphone off because I'm still coughing a lot. So just in case my mute doesn't work. So you mentioned about comp tickets, and we are having Ursumus come up, and there was recently a question about whether or not we could comp. It was kind of, from what I understand, the question was vague in, can we comp the people who work the whole event? Our policy doesn't necessarily say yes or no. It kind of is pretty vague in that kind of seems to be up to the financial committee. But is that something that you guys have seen happen in the past for some of the bigger events where we're comping more than like royalty?
Yes.
Okay. So is really the only barrier is they have to be a paid member?
Yes.
Okay.
And
so
it has
pretty
to
much
be
just up to us.
in your policy, and they have to be a paid member.
Okay.
But
you should have a list.
Right.
So we do have a gate policy that tells us that we have to comp certain people. They're just asking if we can comp people that aren't specifically listed as being comped in here.
You can I would think you could put it in there as, you know, event staff as defined by, you know, with approval of Exchequer, Seneschal, and B&B, or, you know, something to that effect.
Like with approval. So, and that seems to be what it basically is like, put it in your budget. If the financial committee approves, fine. And if that's fine, I don't want to change it. I just wanted to make sure that kind of, we're just trying to clarify basically whose decision is that. Is it up to the stewards or is it up to the financial committee?
Yeah, financial
and
committee.
Kind of both in the sense of it,
I know on the Kingdom side, we ask event stewards to list their comp list with their budget. What my recommendation to you is, that's kind of a slippery slope, and you need to define what constitutes working at the event.
So that is exactly what I was saying.
If I come to sit gate for 2 hours, does that mean I get free admission?
I'm head of retinue. I'm always working the whole event, you know?
I was talking to Jada, like, we need to maybe define a little bit, like, are there other people who already have that in words about how you delineate between what would be a reasonable thing to approve and what isn't? Like, if other people already figured that out, is there guidance that we could have?
Yeah.
The Law Or's policy states that if you want to comp at an event, one, it's got to be a blue card member. And 2, it has to be presented to the financial committee before the event. It doesn't have to be presented with the bid because like we got bids a year in advance now. But it does have to be done in a reasonable time before the event, because if you comp so many, it's going to make or break the event. There used to be a time with Autumn where they used to comp 35 people. And I'm like, no.
That's a lot of
You know,
not income.
I'm the Exchequer. I have to be at every event. I work every event in some way or another, and I pay for the event. Why aren't the people who are working the event pay for the event?
I mean,
Stromgard changed their policy for the same reason. The Baron and Baroness, they are no longer comp for any of our local events.
Oh,
They
our
pay to
Baron,
get in just like everybody else.
our Baron and Baroness have the option, and they typically choose to pay, but they do have the option, and any landed Baron and Baroness in the area has the option to be comped for an event.
And that is what ours does specifically say. Baron and Baroness, Royalty of Ontier, Champions of Ontier, Greater Kingdom officers can be if they choose, but it doesn't say anything about, non-baronial level at least officer. Well, I guess I think honestly, I think our policy is probably fine in that you can either submit it as part of your bid, or it does say the steward is personally responsible for any expenses that they approve that exceed the event budget without prior committee. So basically, like if they come and ask us before the event and we approve it, then yes. But I'm pretty sure the way I'm interpreting this is it's up to the financial committee. And if that is the case, that's what I want to be able to go back and say. So that was pretty much what I just needed to expand on that a little bit. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? The Seahawks game is going to start any minute now. So
what are you saying?
Actually, I think it did start already.
Kickoff has happened. You are correct. I can hear it behind me.
Yeah, I heard Aladar comes over and watches the game with us every Sunday. I heard him come in, so I figured it was probably starting if any second now. So.
And if nobody else has any questions, we can wrap up early. I'm okay with that. And then if you have any questions, you can also post it in the Exchequer chat. And one of us will grab the answer for you.
I mean, if anybody wants to reach out to me as Chamberlain directly, I look at the emails. A lot of us are already friends on Facebook. I'm never afraid to answer questions or even come up if you guys want to have a one-on-one time with me.
Well, thank you all. I have lots and lots of notes.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody who came in and presented today. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for doing this with me. And I do believe, Aislinn, do you have any final words? Meetings coming up, etc.
We will probably have a Exchequer meeting at 12th night, just because, it's 12th night.
Tradition.
And see what new things the incoming crown want us to pursue in the next 12 months. I'm imagining one of those things is going to be book reviews, because we've come up behind schedule on those. So I'm sure you'll be hearing from me saying, hey, I need to review your books.
Well, and I think, honestly, though, like if you're all new Exchequers, you should have had a book review when you took over.
Shush.
Should have.
Should have being the operative term there.
Well, you've only been doing it for 4 days.
Yeah, like I haven't quite done that part yet.
But you're 3 days late for the book review.
No. Aquaterra really needs a book review.
Oh, I'm realizing this.
I took over as Exchequer of Three Mountains in 2014, and I don't believe that there's been a book review in that span of time. Certainly not while I was Exchequer for 4 years, and I'm not sure when the last one was done prior to that.
Well, William, you're also the reporting deputy for the Rivers area. Maybe you should make that happen.
Well,
That was
I-
going to be my
You're on
question
my
is how
wish
do
list.
you make that happen? Like, how
If-
would I request a book review of our books?
And
Right.
and the reality
What's the
is,
next PayPal?
even as a regional, I don't know what is required for a book review. Partially because I've not been part of one.
Well, William, I have Three Mountains on my list. To send an email to them to ask them to let me do a book review. So maybe once I get some specific dates from them of when they're available, I'll see if you're available and you can be my second. And we can go
Spectacular.
through it.
I do happen to know that the new Exchequer for Three Mountains is very big in tax preparation, and I'm also a CPA. So if it doesn't happen really quickly, it's not going to happen for me until after middle of April.
Right.
We have a bunch of questions about PayPal. Kira, any time frame?
I can, does it need to be done before the first of the year, or can we wait until like
I'm
right
not sure
after
about the
holidays?
others, but we're looking at doing an event in April, so we would need to get the paperwork in January, February, somewhere in there.
Okay, I can look at my schedule and maybe do one right after the first of the year, and that'll give everybody the opportunity to have that training.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so anybody else, anything else? Everybody good?
I also do know that Angela was not able to attend because of it being in the Advent season, and she had church obligations. How soon is this video going to be available online as part of the Exchequer resources?
Probably within the day.
Okay, spectacular. Thank you, Torkel.
I mean, basically, it's letting Zoom do its thing, me downloading it and uploading it to YouTube.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Lillian?
When you guys do post the video, will you post a link on the Facebook, on the Exchequer's Facebook, so that we can click on it to get to it?
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for hosting this. This was great.
Thanks, it was fun.
Thank you all for spending time with
Good.
us.
I had fun trying to fit that all in on 30 minutes.